The nursery had taken me 4 months to perfect. Every weekend of my third trimester, I'd driven the 40 minutes from my apartment to my parents' house, paintbrush in hand, determined to create something beautiful in my childhood bedroom. Soft lavender walls with hand-painted butterflies, a white crib I'd saved for since the day I saw that positive test, and a rocking chair where my grandmother had once sung me to sleep. I'd moved back home at 7 months pregnant when my landlord sold the building. Just until I get back on my feet, I'd promised my parents. They'd agreed, grudgingly, reminding me that at 28, I should have my life together. My brother Ethan, 31 and unemployed, had been living in their basement for 5 years, but somehow that was different. Now, 3 weeks postpartum, I stood in the doorway of what had been my daughter Sophie's nursery, my C-section incision still tender, watching a stranger direct my father on where to position furniture. The crib should go by the window, Brittany commanded, her bleached blonde hair piled high, her hand resting on a belly that barely showed at 4 months. And that ugly purple has got to go. We're thinking blue for our little prince. My mother appeared behind me, not even trying to look apologetic. Oh good, you're up. We need you to move your things out today. Move my things? I shifted Sophie in my arms, her tiny weight still feeling surreal. This is her nursery, we live here. Not anymore, Dad said, not even looking up from the crib he was dismantling. The crib I'd spent 8 hours assembling while 9 months pregnant because he'd been too busy watching football. Brittany's moving in. She's carrying our grandson. I'm holding your granddaughter, I said, my voice shaking. He finally looked at me then, his expression dismissive. Boys matter more, Veronica. They carry on the family name. Your daughter is sweet, but a boy? That's a legacy. I felt like I'd been slapped. Sophie stirred against my chest, making those little newborn sounds that still made my heart clench. 3 weeks old. She was 3 weeks old and already being told she mattered less. Where are we supposed to go? I asked numbly. Brittany laughed, a sharp sound like breaking glass. Not our problem. Maybe you should have thought about that before getting knocked up by some loser who wouldn't even stick around. She was talking about David, who died in Afghanistan 2 months after I told him I was pregnant. We'd been planning to marry when he got back, but explaining that to people who'd already decided my story seemed pointless. You have an hour, Mom said briskly. Brittany has a doctor's appointment at 2, and she needs to rest after. An hour? My voice cracked. I just had major surgery. I can't even lift anything over 10 pounds. Where am I supposed to? There's a women's shelter downtown, Brittany offered with a fake smile. They take single moms. Ethan appeared then, wearing the same ratty bathrobe he'd had since college. Rit's right, sis. You need to learn to stand on your own feet. Can't mooch off Mom and Dad forever. The irony of that statement, coming from a man who hadn't paid rent in half a decade, should have been funny. Instead, it just hurt. I looked around the nursery one more time. At the growth chart, I'd already started marking, even though Sophie wouldn't stand for months. At the butterfly mobile I'd special ordered from an artist in Vermont. At the basket of books I'd been reading to her every night, convinced she could hear my voice and know she was loved. I need help packing, I said quietly. I can't lift. Figure it out, Dad said, already carrying the crib frame toward the door. We've got work to do here. They left me standing there, holding my daughter in a room that was being erased as if we'd never existed. I called my best friend Marissa with shaking hands. She arrived in 20 minutes with her husband Connor and a rage that could have powered a small city. They're doing what? She shrieked, then immediately lowered her voice when Sophie fussed. Sorry, sweet girl. Auntie Marissa's just planning your grandparents' murders. It's fine, I lied, throwing clothes into garbage bags because my parents hadn't even given me boxes. I'll figure something out. Connor was already loading Sophie's bouncer into their truck. You'll stay with us. No arguments. I can't impose. Shut up, Marissa said firmly. You're not imposing. You're surviving. As we packed, I could hear Brittany in the next room, complaining about the baby smell and demanding my mother hire professional cleaners. My mother, who'd never once offered to help with Sophie's laundry or midnight feedings, was promising her a cleaning service and interior decorator. I found myself in the kitchen, grabbing Sophie's formula, the special kind for her sensitive stomach that cost $30 a can. Mom appeared, hand out. That's expensive formula. Brittany might need it. I stared at her. Brittany's baby won't be born for 5 months. This expires in 3 weeks. Still, boys eat more. We should stock up. That's when something inside me snapped. Not broke, snapped into place, like a bone being reset. No, I said calmly, tucking the formula into the diaper bag. Excuse me? I said no, this is my daughter's formula, purchased with my money, for my living, breathing child. Not for Brittany's theoretical prince. Mom's face flushed. Don't be selfish, Veronica. Family helps family. Really? I laughed, but it came out cold. Where was family when I was up for 72 hours straight because Sophie had colic? Where was family when I couldn't shower for a week because I couldn't put her down? Where was family when I sobbed in the emergency room, terrified something was wrong, completely alone? You chose to have a baby without a father. He died. I screamed and Sophie started crying. I bounced her gently, lowering my voice. He died serving our country. He never got to meet her. He never got to see this nursery I built for our daughter, and you're giving it away because she's just a girl. Dad appeared in the doorway. Keep your voice down. You're upsetting Brittany. I'm being thrown out with a 3-week-old baby, and you're worried about upsetting the woman stealing my daughter's room. No one's stealing anything, he said firmly. This is our house. We decide who lives here. Our house. There it was. The weapon they'd always held over my head. Their house, their rules, their favoritism toward their do-nothing son and whatever woman he happened to drag home. You're right, I said quietly. It is your house. Something in my tone must have worried him because his eyes narrowed. Don't do anything stupid, Veronica. I smiled. It felt like armor clicking into place. Wouldn't dream of it. They had no idea what was coming next. Marissa and Connor's guest room was small but clean, and they'd somehow managed to fit Sophie's crib in the corner. That first night, as I sat nursing her while Marissa made us tea, I told them everything. I'm going to bury them, Marissa said flatly. Legally, emotionally, financially. Total scorched earth. How? I asked tiredly. They're right, it is their house. Connor, who worked in real estate law, looked thoughtful. Maybe, maybe not. Tell me about your grandmother again. Your dad's mom. She passed when I was 15, left the house to Dad. Did you ever see the will? I shook my head. Why? Just curious. I've seen a lot of inheritance cases where things aren't as clear-cut as they seem. I filed that away, too exhausted to think about it. But over the next weeks, as I slowly healed and found my rhythm with Sophie, Connor's words kept echoing. Meanwhile, my family's cruelty continued via text. Pictures of the nursery being painted navy blue. Updates about Brittany's appointments, always scheduled during what had been Sophie's feeding times, as if to prove they'd never accommodated us. Mom sent an invoice for utilities used during your stay, dated from when I moved back home. They're charging you rent retroactively. Marissa was incredulous. While you were pregnant. $500 a month, I confirmed. Plus utilities, says I have 30 days to pay or they'll take legal action. That's when I decided to do some legal research of my own. The courthouse records were dusty but digitized. I started with property records, working backwards. The house had indeed been Grandma Rose's, purchased with Grandpa before he died young. She lived there alone for 40 years, Dad moving back in to care for her in her final year. Then I found the will. My hands shook as I read it. Connor had been right. Things weren't clear-cut at all. The house hadn't been left to Dad. It had been left in trust for all biological grandchildren of Rose Marie Harrison in equal shares, to be administered by Peter Harrison until the youngest grandchild reaches age 25. All biological grandchildren, equal shares. I was a biological grandchild. So was Ethan. So was Sophie. Dad wasn't the owner. He was the trustee. And he'd been living in, and now giving away rooms in, a house that was 1/3 mine and 1/3 my daughter's. But it got better. Or worse, depending on your perspective. The trust had very specific provisions. The trustee could live in the house while administering it, but couldn't make major changes without beneficiary consent, couldn't charge rent to beneficiaries, and absolutely couldn't favor one beneficiary over another. Every rent payment I'd made, every time they'd helped Ethan while denying me support, every renovation they'd done for him while refusing to fix my broken window, it was all carefully documented. I brought everything to a lawyer, not Connor, who wisely suggested I find someone neutral. Patricia Winters specialized in trust litigation, and her eyes widened as she reviewed the documents. "This is serious," she said, regaining her composure. "There's a pattern here. We can take legal action." "Can we stop it?" She gave a confident smile. "We can do more than that." The first letter arrived on a Tuesday. I knew because Ethan texted a photo. "What is this?" It was a cease and desist, halting renovations on the trust property, demanding that my daughter's share of the inheritance be respected, and requesting a full accounting of trust disbursements for the past 13 years. Dad called. I didn't answer. Mom texted paragraphs about family and disappointment. I forwarded everything to Patricia. Brittany posted online claiming people were trying to tear others down. That too went into the file. The formal lawsuit was filed discreetly. Breach of fiduciary duty, mismanagement of funds, and misuse of property. The evidence showed that payments I'd made were from trust property, not personal contributions. Support had been selectively given. Documents confirmed the trust was intended to benefit all grandchildren equally. But the most revealing details came during discovery. There was evidence of personal and trust funds being mixed, expenses charged to the trust that didn't serve all beneficiaries. Meanwhile, my documented requests for school and baby supplies had been declined. "This meets the criteria for financial misconduct," Patricia said. "I don't want to ruin lives," I replied, holding Sophie. "I just want fairness." She nodded. "That's exactly what we're after." Court proceedings moved slowly, but social dynamics shifted fast. News spread and concern grew. Brittany eventually stepped away from the situation when questions arose. Ethan had to reconsider his plans when the trust funds were frozen. Mom, once proud of her community ties, stepped back from certain roles. But the moment that stayed with me, Sophie's first word wasn't mama or da, it was mine. She said it as we signed the settlement. The house would be sold, proceeds fairly divided, questionable trustee fees reviewed, back payments including rent returned with interest. It came to nearly $200,000 each. "Mine," Sophie declared, reaching for a pen. "That's right," I said. "Yours." Dad used to say boys carry on a legacy, but he misunderstood what legacy meant. It wasn't the name or the property, not favoritism disguised as tradition. The real legacy was Grandma Rose, who sewed for decades, raised a son alone, and left her home equally to her grandchildren, including a great-granddaughter she'd never meet, a girl some thought wouldn't matter. She mattered. She now had a college fund, a safe space. A mother who learned that family is about presence, not entitlement, about who shows up, who holds you, who fights for your future. The house went to a new family with twin girls. I drove past one day, Sophie chatting in her car seat, and saw them painting a nursery. Purple, with butterflies. "Look, Sophie," I said. "That used to be your room." She glanced, then turned back to her toy, already focused on the future. My phone buzzed, another message from Mom, asking to visit. I didn't reply. I drove home, to the apartment Connor and Marissa helped us find. I carried Sophie up the stairs myself. Her room here is smaller, but it's ours. Built with care, not resentment, filled with peace, not regret. That night, as I rocked her to sleep, I whispered the truth they tried to steal from her. "You matter, Sophie. You've always mattered. And anyone who says different." She sighed in her sleep, perfect and whole and worth everything I've fought for. They have no idea what's coming next.
I should have known better when Tyler showed up at my door with those puppy dog eyes and a sob story about rent prices. But when your only child stands on your doorstep with his girlfriend's suitcases behind him, begging for just a few months to get back on their feet, what kind of mother says no? My name is Simone, and I'm 49 years old. I've been making terrible decisions in the name of motherly love for most of those years. "Mum, please," Tyler had said, shifting his weight from foot to foot like he used to do as a kid when he'd broken something. Paris lost her job at the boutique, and our lease is up next week. We just need time to save up for a deposit somewhere else. Paris stood behind him, all doe eyes and grateful smiles, clutching a designer purse that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "Mrs. Harvey, we're so sorry to impose. Tyler talks about you constantly. You raised such an amazing son." I melted. Of course I did. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. We'll figure something out. That was 3 months ago. 3 months of watching my quiet, orderly life get steamrolled by two 20-somethings who treated my home like their personal playground. I work as a paralegal at Morrison & Associates downtown. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps me sharp. After my divorce from Greg 8 years ago, I've gotten used to my routines. Coffee at 6, work by 8, home by 5:30, dinner for 1, and Netflix until bed. Simple, peaceful. Tyler grew up in this house. I bought it right after the divorce with my settlement money, determined to give him stability after his father decided that being a husband and dad was too much responsibility. I worked overtime for years to keep up with the mortgage, skipped vacations, ate ramen so Tyler could have name-brand cereal. When he graduated high school, I took out a second mortgage to help with his college expenses. "You don't have to do that, Mom," he'd said, but not very convincingly. "It's what mothers do," I'd replied. "I want you to have opportunities I never had." He graduated with a business degree and moved in with Paris. For 2 blissful years, I had my house to myself. I painted the walls colours I actually liked. I bought nice soap. I left dishes in the sink overnight without apologising to anyone. Then the economy got rough. And here we are. Just temporarily, Tyler had promised. We'll be out of your hair before you know it. The first week was fine. They kept to Tyler's old room, helped with groceries, even cooked dinner a few times. Paris complimented my decorating and asked about my work. I started thinking maybe this could work. Week 2, they rearranged my living room furniture to make better use of the space. Paris moved my reading chair to the basement and replaced it with a gaming setup Tyler had in storage. "This flows so much better," she said, admiring their handiwork. "Your old setup was kind of dated." Week 3, my bathroom counter disappeared under Paris's skincare routine. Bottles and tubes and little gadgets I couldn't identify. When I asked if she could maybe consolidate, she laughed. "Oh, Simone, you're so low maintenance. I wish I could be like that, but I have to take care of my skin. Tyler loves that I make an effort." My friend Natasha warned me during lunch at work. "Girl, you need to set some boundaries before they take over completely." "They're just getting comfortable," I said. "It's temporary." Natasha raised an eyebrow. Famous last words. This morning, I walked into my kitchen to find a pile of trash on the floor next to the overflowing can. My refrigerator, which I'd stocked with fresh vegetables and lean proteins over the weekend, was now crammed with energy drinks, leftover pizza boxes, and take-out containers. Tyler was at the kitchen table, scrolling through his phone while eating cereal from my good china bowl. "Tyler, what happened to the trash?" He didn't look up. "Bag was full. I figured you'd handle it when you got up. And my groceries?" "We ate them. Don't worry, we'll replace them eventually." He finally glanced at me, irritated by the interruption. "You're home all day anyway. Just handle it." I stared at him, at my son, who I'd sacrificed everything for, dismissing me like hired help in my own kitchen. "Handle it?" "Yeah, Mum, it's not a big deal." Something cold settled in my chest, something that felt suspiciously like the moment you realise you've been played. I handled it. I handled the trash, the dishes, the sticky counters, and the mysterious stains on my hardwood floors. I handled Tyler's laundry mixed in with mine without asking. I handled Paris using my expensive shampoo and leaving the empty bottle in the shower. By the end of the week, I was handling everything. "Simone, could you grab us some snacks from the store?" Paris called from the couch where she was painting her nails on my coffee table. "We're having people over tonight." "People over?" "Just a few friends. Nothing crazy." Tyler emerged from the kitchen with a beer. "Yeah, Mum, just a small thing. You don't mind, right?" I minded. I minded that they hadn't asked. I minded that my Friday night was now going to be spent listening to 20-somethings get drunk in my living room. But I nodded and grabbed my keys. At the grocery store, I found myself buying chips and beer for people I'd never met, using money from my carefully budgeted paycheck. The cashier, a woman about my age, gave me a sympathetic look. "Big party tonight?" Something like that. When I got home, the house was already full of strangers. Music thumped from my speakers, and someone had moved my dining room table to make space for beer pong. Paris was holding court in my kitchen, telling a story about her crazy landlord at her old apartment. "She was so uptight about everything," Paris laughed, "like, it's just normal wear and tear, you know." I set the groceries on the counter and started putting things away. Nobody acknowledged me. I was invisible in my own home. Around midnight, I gave up trying to sleep and came downstairs to find red wine spilled on my cream-coloured rug, a cigarette burn on my coffee table. Someone had used my good plates as ashtrays. The last guest left around 2 a.m. Tyler and Paris stumbled upstairs without a word, leaving me to survey the damage alone. I spent the next 3 hours cleaning, scrubbing wine stains, emptying ashtrays, picking up bottles and cups from every surface. My back ached, my hands were raw from cleaning solution, and I had to work in the morning. The next week brought new indignities. Paris started answering my front door like she lived there. She gave my neighbour Mila directions to my house when Mila came looking for me, speaking with the authority of someone who belonged. "Oh, Simone's at work, but I can take a message," I heard her say through the window. Tyler began inviting friends over during the day while I was at work. I'd come home to find strangers in my kitchen, eating my food, using my Wi-Fi. When I mentioned it, Tyler shrugged. "They're my friends, Mum. What's the big deal?" "The big deal is this is my house." "Our house," Paris corrected from the couch. "We live here too now." That weekend, I was in my bedroom when I heard Paris on a FaceTime call with someone. My door was cracked and her voice carried clearly from the living room. "Girl, it's perfect," she was saying. "Tyler's mum is like our live-in house elf. She cleans everything, buys all the groceries, does our laundry. I barely have to lift a finger." The person on the other end said something I couldn't hear. "No, she doesn't mind. She's one of those mum types, you know. She lives for this stuff. Taking care of people is literally all she has." I closed my door and sat on my bed, staring at the wall. House elf. That's what I'd become. Monday morning, I was running late for work because I'd spent an extra hour cleaning up after another impromptu gathering. I rushed through the kitchen, grabbing my coffee and keys, when I noticed the floor was sticky under my feet. "Tyler, what's on the floor?" "Spilled some soda last night, meant to clean it up." "Could you clean it now? I'm already late." He looked at me like I'd asked him to perform surgery. "You just do it real quick. You're better at that stuff." I grabbed paper towels and got on my hands and knees, scrubbing dry coke off my kitchen floor in my work clothes. When I stood up, Paris was watching from the doorway, coffee mug in hand. "You missed a spot," she said, pointing to a sticky patch near the refrigerator. Then she laughed, actually laughed. Tyler joined in. "Mum, you're being dramatic. It's a mother's job to clean up after us. What else do you even do all day?" I stood there, paper towels in my hand, staring at my son, at the boy I'd raised, who was now sneering at me like I was the help. That's the moment something inside me simply ruptured. I went to work that day with sticky residue still under my fingernails and a plan forming in my head. During my lunch break, instead of eating in the break room with Natasha, I sat at my desk and pulled up the state tenant-landlord laws on my computer. Interesting reading. "What's got you so focused?" Natasha asked, appearing at my cubicle with a sandwich. "Just researching something for a case." She peered over my shoulder. "Eviction procedures? That's not our usual stuff. Personal interest." That evening, I stopped at Office Depot and bought a small filing cabinet with a lock. I set it up in my bedroom closet, behind my winter coats where no one would think to look. Then I started documenting everything. Photo of the cigarette burn on my coffee table, screenshot of Paris's Instagram story showing her feet propped up on my furniture with the caption, "Lazy Sunday vibes at home." Receipt for the groceries I'd bought for their party. Pictures of the wine stain on my rug that still hadn't come out completely. Every mess became evidence. Every dismissive comment got written down with date and time. I started keeping a notebook in my purse, jotting down details like a detective. Tyler left dirty dishes in sink for 4 days despite multiple requests to clean them. Paris used my car without asking, returned it with empty gas tank. Found strangers in my house again when I came home from work. Tyler claims he forgot to mention they were coming over. 2 weeks into my documentation project, I ran into Damien at the grocery store. We'd gone to high school together, but I hadn't seen him in years. He was in uniform, looking official and competent. Simone? Wow, it's been forever. Damien, hi, you're with the sheriff's department now? Deputy sheriff, yeah. Been at it about 10 years now. He smiled. You look good. How's Tyler? He's living with me right now, going through a rough patch. Something in my tone must have caught his attention. Everything okay? Just family stuff. You know how it is. Actually, I don't. Never had kids, but I deal with a lot of family disputes in this job. Sometimes people need to know their legal options. I looked at him more carefully. Legal options? Property rights, tenant issues, that sort of thing. Amazing how many people don't realise what power they actually have in their own homes. We exchanged numbers before parting ways. I saved his contact as Deputy D in my phone. That weekend, Paris decided to redecorate my living room again. I came home from running errands to find my family photos taken down and replaced with abstract art prints she'd bought. I hope you don't mind, she said, not sounding like she cared whether I minded or not. The old pictures were kind of depressing, all those divorce papers and single mum vibes, you know. She'd put my wedding photo and Tyler's baby pictures in a box by the stairs. Those are my memories, Paris. And now you have new ones. We're making this place feel more current. Tyler walked in carrying a drill. We're hanging some shelves too. This place needs more storage. You're drilling holes in my walls. Our walls, Mom. We live here too. I picked up the box of photos and carried it to my room. Behind my locked filing cabinet, I added a new entry. Removed family photos without permission, drilling unauthorized holes in walls. The next Tuesday, Paris threw another party. This time, she didn't even pretend to ask. I came home to find a dozen people in my backyard, music blasting, someone grilling on my patio. Simone! Paris waved from my deck chair, drink in hand. Perfect timing. Could you grab more ice from the freezer? I stood in my own backyard, being asked to serve drinks to strangers at a party I didn't know was happening. Several people looked at me expectantly, waiting for me to play hostess. I'm actually pretty tired, I said. Oh, come on, Tyler called out. Don't be antisocial. These are our friends. I have work tomorrow. So do we, Paris laughed. Well, Tyler does. I'm still job hunting, but we know how to have fun and be responsible. I went inside and locked my bedroom door. From my window, I could see them partying on my deck, using my furniture, eating my food. Someone had spilled something on my patio table that was already staining the wood. I opened my filing cabinet and added photos of the party to my growing collection. Then I pulled out my phone and texted Damien. Hypothetical question. How long does it take to evict someone in this state? He responded within minutes. Depends on the situation, with proper documentation and legal grounds, about 30 days from filing. I looked at my calendar and counted forward. Only 30 days to go. The breaking point came when I overheard Tyler on the phone with his friend Marcus. Yeah, man, we basically own the place now. Tyler was saying, sprawled across my couch with his feet on my coffee table. Mum's not going anywhere, and she can't exactly kick us out. It's perfect. What do you mean you own it? Marcus asked. I could hear him through Tyler's speaker. I mean, we've been here long enough. Possession is 9/10 of the law, right? Plus, Mum would never actually do anything. She's too soft. I stood frozen in my kitchen doorway, coffee mug in hand. Dude, that's genius. Free rent forever. Exactly. And Paris has been posting about it online. Everyone thinks we bought the place. That afternoon, I did something I'd never done before. I looked up Paris's social media accounts. Her Instagram was a carefully curated collection of photos taken in my house, captioned like she owned it. Sunday morning coffee in our kitchen. Finally have space for all my plants. Loving our new place. The most recent post showed her and Tyler on my front porch, arms around each other, with the caption, Finally, homeowners vibes, exig adulting, at blessed at us our place. 43 likes. 12 comments congratulating them on their new home. I screenshot everything. You need to stop letting them walk all over you, Natasha said when I showed her the post during lunch. This is insane, Simone. They're literally stealing your identity online. I know. So what are you going to do about it? I pulled out my phone and showed her the folder I'd created. Screenshots, photos, receipts, documented conversations. I'm building a case. A case for what? Eviction. Natasha's eyes widened. You're actually going to kick them out. I'm going to follow the law. They're tenants, whether they want to admit it or not. And tenants have obligations. What kind of obligations? Not damaging property, not disturbing neighbours, not misrepresenting their living situation. I scrolled through my evidence. They've violated every single tenant responsibility in the book. Girl, you've been holding out on me. When did you become a legal mastermind? When my son decided I was his personal servant. That evening, I printed out every social media post, every photo, every piece of evidence I'd collected. I organised it all in manila folders, labelled and dated. Then I drove to the courthouse. The clerk at the filing window was a tired-looking woman about my age. I need to file for eviction, I said. Rental property? My primary residence. I have tenants who are violating their agreement. She handed me a stack of forms. You'll need to fill these out completely. Filing fee is $85. I sat in the courthouse lobby, filling out paperwork that officially designated me as landlord and Tyler and Paris as tenants. It felt strange writing my son's name in the defendant section. Grounds for eviction, the form asked. I checked multiple boxes: property damage, violation of occupancy terms, misrepresentation of tenancy status, failure to maintain property standards. When I handed the completed forms back to the clerk, she reviewed them quickly. Looks good. You'll need to serve them within 72 hours. Do you have someone who can do that, or do you need the sheriff's department? I have someone. I texted Damien on my way to the car. Are you working tomorrow? I might need that favour we talked about. What kind of favour? The legal kind, he called me 5 minutes later. Simone, what's going on? I filed for eviction today. I need someone to serve the papers. Against Tyler? Against Tyler and his girlfriend. They're tenants now, whether they like it or not. Are you sure about this? Once you serve those papers, there's no going back. I'm sure. OK, I can serve them tomorrow evening when I get off shift. Fair warning, though, they're not going to take it well. I'm counting on it. When I got home, Tyler and Paris were in the kitchen making dinner. My kitchen smelled like garlic and wine, and they'd used every pot I owned. Hey, Mom, Tyler said without looking up. We're making pasta. There's enough for you if you want some. That's nice of you. No problem. Oh, and we invited a few people over this weekend. Nothing big, just a small housewarming thing. Paris looked up from stirring sauce. I already ordered decorations online. It's going to be so cute. Our first real party as homeowners. I smiled and went upstairs to my room. In my filing cabinet, I placed the court summons in a folder I'd labelled Happy Memories. 24 hours until serving. Then the real fun would begin. Damien arrived at exactly 6 p.m. the next evening, still in uniform. I watched from my bedroom window as he walked up to the front door, official papers in hand. Tyler answered, beer in hand, laughing at something Paris had said behind him. "Tyler Harvey?" "Yeah, that's me. What's up, officer?" "Deputy Burke, Sheriff's Department. I have legal documents for you and Paris Rodriguez." The laughter died. "Legal documents?" "Eviction notice. You're being served." I couldn't hear Tyler's response, but I saw him stumble backward. Paris appeared in the doorway, snatching the papers from Tyler's hands. "What the hell is this?" she shrieked. "Ma'am, those are official court documents. You have 30 days to vacate the premises." "This is a mistake. We live here. This is our house. According to these documents, you're tenants in violation of your lease agreement. You'll want to read through everything carefully." Tyler was scanning the papers, his face getting redder by the second. "Where's my mom?" "I wouldn't know, sir. I'm just serving the papers." "Mom!" Tyler bellowed toward the house. "Get out here right now!" I took my time walking downstairs. When I reached the front door, Tyler was pacing on the porch, papers crumpled in his fist. "What the hell is this?" He shoved the documents at me. "It looks like an eviction notice." "You're evicting us, your own son." "I'm enforcing the law. You're tenants who have violated the terms of your residency." Paris was reading through the papers, her face pale. "Property damage, unauthorized guests, misrepresentation of tenancy status. This is bullshit." "Is it?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshot of her Instagram post. "Finally, homeowners vibes. You told everyone online that you own my house. That was just social media stuff. It doesn't mean anything. It means you committed fraud. You represented yourself as a homeowner when you're actually a tenant." Tyler stepped closer, his voice getting louder. "You can't do this to us. We're family." "Family doesn't treat each other like servants." "We never treated you like a servant." Damien cleared his throat. "Folks, I need to finish serving these papers. Tyler Harvey and Paris Rodriguez, you've been officially notified. You have 30 days from today to vacate the premises." "This is insane," Paris said, tears starting to form. "Simone, we can work this out. We don't need to involve lawyers and courts." "You involved them when you decided to play house in my home without permission." "We had permission. You said we could stay." "Temporarily, to save money for your own place, not to take over my house and treat me like hired help." Tyler crumpled the papers and threw them on the ground. "Fine, we'll leave. But don't expect me to ever forgive you for this." "I don't." After Damien left, Tyler and Paris spent the evening making frantic phone calls. I could hear them through the walls, calling friends, family, anyone who might take them in. "She's lost her mind," Paris kept saying. "She actually called the sheriff on us." "My own mother," Tyler added. "Can you believe that?" The next few days were tense. They barely spoke to me, communicating only through passive-aggressive sticky notes left around the house. "Thanks for the eviction notice. Really feeling the family love." HTT. But they didn't leave. If anything, they seemed to be digging in deeper, making themselves more at home out of spite. "We have 30 days, I heard Paris tell someone on the phone. "She'll change her mind before then. She always does." That weekend, packages started arriving. Party decorations, string lights, a rented sound system. Paris was going ahead with her housewarming party. "You're still having the party?" I asked when I found her hanging streamers in my living room. "Of course. We already invited everyone. Besides, we still live here for another 3 weeks." "This is my house. And we're your tenants, right? That means we have tenant rights. You can't stop us from having guests." She was right, technically. I couldn't legally prevent them from having people over, as long as they weren't violating noise ordinances or damaging property. Just keep it reasonable, I said. Don't worry, it'll be perfect. That evening, I sat in my backyard with a glass of wine, watching Mila water her plants next door. Big party planned? She asked, nodding toward the decorations visible through my windows. Not my party. Ah, she gave me a knowing look. Want to come over and watch a movie instead? I have wine and popcorn. That's tempting, but I think I need to stay close to home. In case of emergencies? Something like that. She smiled and handed me a second glass of wine over the fence. Well, if you change your mind, my door's open. I accepted the wine and settled into my patio chair. From here, I could see Paris arranging flowers in my good vases, Tyler setting up speakers in my living room. Tomorrow was the party, their big celebration of home ownership. I pulled out my phone and checked the calendar. 22 days left on their eviction notice. Perfect timing. The morning of the party, I did something I hadn't done in months. I put on my old wedding ring and the red lipstick I used to wear when I felt powerful. Then I made myself a full breakfast and ate it slowly at my kitchen table while Tyler and Paris rushed around, setting up for their big day. "Mum, could you move your car?" Tyler asked, not looking at me. "People are going to need parking." "I'll move it to the street." "Thanks." He paused. "And maybe, could you just stay upstairs tonight? This is kind of important to us." "I'll stay out of your way." Paris emerged from the bathroom, hair in curlers, wearing my bathrobe. "Simone, I borrowed this. Hope you don't mind." "Not at all." She studied my face suspiciously. "You're being weird. Are you planning something?" "Just planning to have a quiet evening." By 6 p.m, the house was transformed. String lights hung from my ceiling, flowers filled every corner, and a professional-looking charcuterie board covered my dining room table. Paris had even rented real wine glasses to replace my everyday ones. The first guests arrived at 7. I recognized some of Tyler's college friends, but most were strangers. They all seemed to know this was Tyler and Paris's new place. "Congratulations on the house," I heard someone say. "Thanks. We're so excited to finally have our own space," Paris replied. I stayed in the kitchen, quietly washing dishes and observing. From my window, I could see more cars arriving, people carrying bottles of wine and gift bags. "Simone!" Paris appeared in the doorway, slightly breathless. "Could you maybe not hover? This is our night." "I'm just cleaning up." "Well, could you clean up somewhere else? You're making our guests uncomfortable." I dried my hands and moved to the living room, where Tyler was holding court near the fireplace. "The best part about having your own place," he was saying to a group of friends, "is that you can finally make your own rules. No more walking on eggshells around parents, you know." "How did you guys afford it?" someone asked. "The market is crazy right now." "We got lucky," Tyler said. "Sometimes you just have to take control of your situation instead of waiting for permission." At 8:30, Tyler called for attention. He climbed onto my coffee table, wine glass raised. "Everyone, can I get your attention?" The room quieted. "I just want to say thank you all for coming to celebrate with us tonight. This house represents something really important to Paris and me." "Speech! Speech!" someone called out. Tyler grinned. Okay, here's to breaking free of old systems. You only grow when you stop listening to your parents and start making your own decisions. Sometimes you have to take what's yours instead of waiting for it to be given to you." The crowd cheered. Paris beamed at him from across the room. "And here's to Paris, who taught me that we deserve better than settling for other people's limitations. We're not kids anymore, and we don't need anyone's permission to live our lives." More cheers. Someone started chanting, "Tyler, Tyler!" Paris made her way to the front of the room. "I just want to add," she said, voice carrying over the crowd, Thank you to Simmy for finally letting go and not hovering anymore. It means so much that she's giving us space to be adults. She raised her glass toward me. To new beginnings! To new beginnings, the crowd echoed. I smiled and raised my own glass of wine. To new beginnings. The party continued around me. I moved through the rooms like a ghost, picking up empty glasses, wiping down surfaces, playing the perfect hostess to a party, celebrating my own displacement. At 9:15, the doorbell rang. I'll get it, I called out, but Tyler was already heading for the door. Probably just more people, he said, swinging it open with a big smile. Damien stood on my porch in full uniform, badge visible, official papers in his hand. Tyler Harvey? Tyler's smile faltered. Yeah? Deputy Burke, Sheriff's Department, I have additional legal documents for you and Paris Rodriguez. The music seemed to get quieter. Conversation stopped as people noticed the uniformed officer at the door. Additional documents, Tyler's voice cracked. Final eviction notice. You have 72 hours to vacate the premises. What? Paris pushed through the crowd, face flushed. 72 hours? The original notice said 30 days. That was before you violated the terms by hosting unauthorized events and continuing to misrepresent your tenancy status. Damien handed her a thick stack of papers. These are the updated terms. Tyler stared at the papers, then at me. There's been a mistake. No mistake, I said calmly, sipping my wine. I just reminded you whose name is still on the mortgage. The silence stretched for what felt like forever. 40 people staring at Tyler holding eviction papers, Paris's face turning red, and me standing there with my wine glass like nothing had happened. This is a joke, right? Someone from the crowd called out. Tyler's hands were shaking. Mom, what the hell? Language, Tyler. We have guests. Guests, Paris shrieked. These are our guests at our housewarming party. Your housewarming party, I corrected, in my house that you're being evicted from. The crowd started murmuring. People were pulling out phones, probably texting about the drama unfolding in front of them. Mom, Damien said to Paris, you need to acknowledge receipt of these documents. I'm not signing anything. You don't have to sign. I just need to confirm you've received them. This is harassment, Tyler yelled. You can't just show up at our party with fake papers. Damien's voice stayed calm and professional. These papers were filed through the county courthouse. They're completely legitimate. But she's my mother. That doesn't change property law, son. I walked to the kitchen and returned with a manila folder. Tyler, would you like to see the evidence? What evidence? I opened the folder and spread photos across the coffee table. Pictures of cigarette burns, wine stains, holes drilled in walls without permission, screenshots of social media posts claiming ownership of my house. Property damage, I said, pointing to each photo. Unauthorized modifications, misrepresentation of tenancy status, violation of occupancy agreements. Paris grabbed one of the screenshots. This is just Instagram. It doesn't mean anything. It means you committed fraud. You told everyone you owned my house while living here rent-free. We were going to pay rent. When? You've been here 4 months without contributing a dime. Tyler was scanning through the photos, his face getting redder. You've been spying on us. I've been documenting tenant violations in my own home. We're not tenants. We're your family. Family doesn't treat each other like servants, Tyler. The crowd was getting uncomfortable. People were grabbing their coats, making excuses to leave. Within 10 minutes, half the party had disappeared. Look what you've done, Paris screamed. You've ruined everything. I didn't ruin anything. I enforced consequences. We had nowhere else to go. You had 4 months to find somewhere else to go. Instead, you decided to play house and treat me like hired help. Tyler stepped closer, his voice getting dangerous. You're being vindictive. This is revenge because Dad left you. Don't you dare bring your father into this. This is exactly why he left. You're controlling and bitter and— Tyler. My voice cut through his rant. Stop talking. No, you want to know the truth? Dad was right to leave. You suffocate people. You make everything about you. I made everything about you. I worked 2 jobs so you could have nice clothes. I took out loans so you could go to college. I gave up dating, vacations, my own life so you could have stability. Nobody asked you to do that. You're right. Nobody asked. I chose to sacrifice for my child because that's what mothers do. But I won't sacrifice my dignity. Paris was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. Simone, please, we can work this out. We'll pay rent, we'll help more around the house. You had months to help around the house. Instead, you called me your house elf. You heard that? I heard everything, every dismissive comment, every joke about how pathetic I am, every plan to take advantage of my kindness. The remaining guests were filing out quickly now, not wanting to be part of the family drama. Tyler watched his friends leave, his celebration crumbling around him. Fine, he said finally. We'll leave. But don't expect me to ever forgive you for this. I don't expect forgiveness. I expect respect. Respect? You just humiliated us in front of everyone we know. You humiliated yourselves. I just provided the venue. Just then, a car pulled up outside. Through the window, I saw a familiar figure getting out. Oh, perfect, I muttered. Greg, my ex-husband, walked through the front door like he still lived here. He was greyer than I remembered, wearing a wrinkled button-down and jeans. What's all this about eviction? He demanded. Tyler called me crying. Hello, Greg. Nice of you to show up. Only took you 8 years. Don't start with me, Simone. Tyler says you're kicking him out over some petty house rules. Petty house rules like not destroying my property and not treating me like a servant. He's your son. He's a grown man who needs to learn consequences. Greg looked around at the party decorations, the eviction papers, the crying girlfriend. This is exactly the kind of drama I was trying to avoid. Well, you avoided it perfectly. You also avoided child support, birthday parties, and every other parental responsibility. I'm here now. You're here now because there's a crisis. Where were you when Tyler graduated? When he needed help with college applications? When he was learning how to be a man? Greg had no answer for that. This isn't revenge, Greg. It's consequences. Something Tyler never learned because his father disappeared when things got difficult. Greg left that night without another word. Tyler and Paris spent the weekend packing in angry silence, slamming drawers and muttering under their breath. I helped by staying out of their way and ordering pizza for dinner each night. On Sunday morning, I found Tyler sitting on the front porch with 2 suitcases, waiting for Paris to finish loading her car. So this is it? He said without looking at me. This is it. I still don't understand why you had to make it so public. You could have just asked us to leave. I did ask, multiple times. You told me it was my job to clean up after you. He was quiet for a long moment. I didn't mean it like that. How did you mean it? I don't know. I thought you liked taking care of people. I like taking care of people who appreciate it, not people who expect it. Paris came out dragging a final box, her face puffy from crying. The car's packed. Tyler stood up and shouldered his backpack. We're staying with Marcus for now, until we find our own place. Good, that's what you should have done 4 months ago. Yeah, well, live and learn, right? His voice was bitter. They walked to the car without saying goodbye. I watched from my doorway as they drove away, Tyler not looking back once. The house felt enormous and quiet. I walked through each room, taking inventory of the damage, the cigarette burn on my coffee table, the wine stain on my rug, the holes in my bedroom wall where Tyler had hung his TV mount, but also my reading chair back in its proper place, my bathroom counter clear of someone else's products, my refrigerator stocked with food I'd actually chosen. I called Mila and asked if she wanted to help me redecorate Tyler's old room. "What are you thinking?" she asked, appearing at my door with a toolbox and a bottle of wine. "Home office, maybe a reading nook by the window." "I love it. Fresh start." We spent the afternoon pulling down Tyler's old posters and painting over the holes in the walls. Mila was good company, chatting about her job at the library and her plans to adopt a cat. "Can I ask you something?" she said while we were painting. "Do you regret it, the eviction?" "I regret that it was necessary, but no, I don't regret doing it." "Even though it was your son?" "Especially because it was my son. I raised him better than that." The next week, Natasha brought lunch to my house instead of meeting at our usual restaurant. "I had to see the aftermath," she said, looking around my clean, quiet living room. "How are you holding up?" "Better than I expected." "Any word from Tyler?" "Nothing, but I saw Paris posted a TikTok about toxic family members that went viral. Apparently I'm famous now." Natasha pulled out her phone. "Oh my God, I have to see this." The video showed Paris crying in a car, talking about how she'd been literally homeless because of her boyfriend's psycho mother who called the police on them for just living their lives. The comments were split between people supporting her and others calling her entitled. "She's getting roasted in the comments," Natasha laughed. "Look at this one. Maybe don't bite the hand that feeds you." "I'm not reading the comments. That way lies madness." "Fair point, but you should know that most people are on your side." That evening, Damien stopped by to check on me. "How are you adjusting to the quiet?" he asked, accepting a beer from my newly organised refrigerator. "It's nice. I forgot what it felt like to come home to my own space." "Any regrets?" "People keep asking me that. No, I don't regret it. I regret that Tyler made it necessary, but I don't regret standing up for myself." "Good. You did the right thing." We sat on my back porch, watching the sunset. It was peaceful in a way my house hadn't been in months. "There's a community barbecue next weekend," Damien said. "At the park. You should come." "I might do that. I'll save you a burger." The next morning, I found an envelope in my mailbox with no return address. Inside was a handwritten letter on notebook paper. "Mum, I've been thinking about what happened. I'm not ready to talk yet, but I wanted you to know that I'm sorry, not for leaving, but for how I treated you. Paris says I should be angrier, but I keep thinking about all the things you did for me growing up. I don't understand why you had to embarrass us like that, but I guess I understand why you were mad. I'm staying with Marcus and looking for my own apartment. Maybe we can talk sometime when I'm not so confused about everything. Tyler." I read the letter twice, then walked to my backyard fire pit. I struck a match and held it to the corner of the paper, watching Tyler's words curl and burn. "Some bridges you rebuild, others you let burn so you can build something better in their place. I built a home out of love. I reclaimed it with justice. Whatever comes next, I'll face it with my name back on the door."
The text from Mom lit up my phone screen. "Family meeting. Our house. 7 p.m. Urgent." My stomach did a familiar, unpleasant flip. Urgent in my family usually meant one of two things. Either they needed me to play tech support for the umpteenth time, or more likely, my brother Carson had messed up again, and they needed a solution, preferably one that involved me. My name is Esme, by the way, and I'd spent most of my adult life trying to build something for myself, away from the constant, low-humming chaos of my family. I walked into their living room at 7 on the dot. The air was thick enough to spread on toast. Mom, Adeline, sat ramrod straight on the sofa, her lips a thin, disapproving line. Dad, George, was slumped in his armchair, looking like he'd aged a decade since I last saw him. And there, perched on the edge of the ottoman like a concerned cherub, was Carson. He even managed to squeeze out a worried frown, though his eyes held that familiar flicker of something I couldn't quite name, but always distrusted. "Esme, thank you for coming," Mom began, her voice tight. "We have some difficult news." I waited. This was their stage. I was just the audience, or occasionally the prop. "We're ruined, Esme," Dad mumbled, staring at his hands. "Financially, completely." I blinked. Ruined? They lived comfortably. Dad had a decent pension. Mom had her part-time job at the library she lorded over. What happened? Mom shot a look at Carson, a strange, almost protective glance, before turning back to me. "It's complicated, dear. Bad investments, unexpected expenses. It's all just piled up. And," she continued, her voice gaining a sharper edge, "we've been looking at all our assets, everything we have, and it's just not enough to cover this hole." I saw Carson nod slowly, his expression a perfect mask of sympathy. He was wearing a new smartwatch, I noticed, very sleek, very expensive looking for someone whose parents were supposedly ruined. Over the past 6 months, while their vague complaints about money had started to surface, Carson had mysteriously acquired a new phone, designer trainers, and was always talking about fancy restaurants he'd been to. "So," Mom said, taking a deep breath, "we need your help." Here it comes, I thought, the ask. "Your little house, Esme," she said, her gaze flicking towards me with an almost accusatory glint. "You bought it when prices were lower. It's gained some equity." My heart began to thump a slow, heavy beat. My house. The small 2-bedroom place I'd poured every spare cent and countless hours of sweat into. My sanctuary, my independence. "We need you to sell it," she stated flatly, "to cover the debts." The room fell silent. I could hear the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, a sound that had underscored every significant and usually unpleasant family announcement of my life. "Sell my house?" I repeated, my voice barely a whisper. "It's the only way, Esme," Carson chimed in, his voice oozing fake concern. "We're family. We have to pull together." He even reached out and patted my arm. I resisted the urge to flinch. Mom seized on his cue. "Exactly, Carson. Thank you for being so understanding. Esme, darling, we know it's a lot to ask, but what else can we do? We'll be out on the street." The melodrama was Oscar-worthy, but then she delivered the line that made my blood boil. "And honestly, Esme," she said, a sigh escaping her lips, "that little online shop of yours, it was always a bit of a gamble, wasn't it? Perhaps if you'd had a more stable career, you could help us in other ways. But this is where we are." My shop, my thriving online craft business that I'd built from scratch, the one that paid my mortgage, my bills, and allowed me to save a little, the one they'd always dismissed as a cute hobby. Now it was somehow to blame for their financial ruin. The audacity was breathtaking. I looked at their faces, Mom's, pinched with a mixture of desperation and self-righteousness, Dad's, crumpled and defeated, avoiding my gaze, and Carson's, that carefully constructed mask of solemn support, but with that tiny, almost imperceptible smirk playing around his lips. He thought he had me. They all did. The dutiful daughter, the eternal scapegoat, ready to sacrifice her hard-won stability for their, what? Mismanagement? Or something else? That new smartwatch gleamed under the lamplight. A cold, clear thought cut through the anger and the hurt. This wasn't just about money. This was about a pattern, a lifetime of it. I took a slow breath, meeting Mom's gaze, then Dad's, then letting my eyes rest on Carson for a fraction too long. "Okay," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Okay, I'll sell the house." I even managed a small, sad smile. For the family. Relief washed over Mom's face so intensely it was almost comical. Dad let out a shaky sigh. Carson's smirk finally broke free, morphing into a satisfied little smile before he quickly schooled his features back into somber concern. "They bought it. every last word. But as I watched them, a different kind of resolve solidified within me, hard and sharp as glass. If they thought I was just going to roll over and let them bulldoze my life to cover up their mess, or more accurately, what I was beginning to suspect was his mess, they were in for a very big surprise. This family meeting wasn't over. It had only just begun. The next morning, Mom called, her voice at least 2 shades lighter. "Esme, darling, I've already spoken to Brenda from down the street. You know her cousin is a real estate agent? She says the market is very good right now. We could get this sorted quickly." "That's great, Mom," I said, forcing enthusiasm into my voice while staring at my laptop screen, a half-written email to a local appraiser open. "Just send me the agent's details." "Oh, wonderful! You see, George, I told you Esme would come through for us," I heard her say to Dad in the background, followed by his indistinct murmur. Carson, naturally, had to add his 2 cents. He sauntered over to my place a couple of days later, ostensibly to see if I needed help packing. He wandered through my living room, picking up my carefully curated knickknacks, a smug little smile playing on his lips. "You know, sis," he said, examining a small ceramic bird I'd made, "it's probably for the best. This place is a bit small, isn't it? Once you've helped Mom and Dad out, you can find a nice little apartment. Less upkeep." "Right," I said, gritting my teeth. "Less upkeep." My little house, my pride and joy, dismissed as a temporary inconvenience. "And you're doing the right thing," he added, patting my shoulder with that infuriatingly condescending air of his. "Family first, always." "Always," I echoed, already picturing the digital breadcrumbs I was determined to follow. As soon as he left, I got to work. My agreement to sell was a smokescreen, a way to buy myself time. I remembered Carson, a few months back, puffing his chest out after a phone call, muttering something about a sweet deal he'd landed that was gonna change things. At the time, I dismissed it as typical Carson bluster. Now, it felt significant. My first stop was their shared online banking. Years ago, I'd helped Mom and Dad set it up, and my login details, embarrassingly, still worked. They weren't exactly tech-savvy, and I doubted they'd ever bothered to change the password I'd set for them, Fluffy193, after their dearly departed cat. Sure enough, I was in. I started scrolling back through months of statements, my heart thumping. I was looking for anything around the time Carson started his spending spree, and my parents began their vague moaning about tightening belts. It didn't take long. There were several large transfers, all marked with vague descriptions like loan repayment or investment withdrawal. But they weren't withdrawals from an investment. They were disbursements into their main checking account. And then, almost immediately, similar large sums would go out, labeled simply transfer, or with a generic biller name I didn't recognize. The amounts were significant, far more than their usual expenses. And the timing? It lined up almost perfectly with Carson's new phone, his designer wardrobe updates, and those fancy dinners he'd been bragging about. "What are you up to, Carson?" I murmured to the screen. I spent hours cross-referencing dates, amounts, trying to piece together a puzzle with half the pieces missing. My online shop orders chimed in the background, a steady rhythm of legitimacy against the murky transactions I was uncovering. Mom called again a few days later. "The agent is coming over to your place tomorrow at 10 to do an initial valuation, Esme. Make sure it's tidy, dear." "Will do, Mom," I said, my mind racing. I needed something more concrete. That evening, I was at their house, ostensibly to pick up some old photo albums Mom wanted me to store safely, since they'd soon be downsizing. The real reason was the family computer in the study. Carson was notoriously lazy about logging out of his accounts. While Mom was fussing in the kitchen and Dad was watching TV, I slipped into the study. My fingers flew over the keyboard. Bingo. He'd left his email logged in. My breath hitched. I scanned his inbox, my eyes darting over subject lines. Most of it was junk, gaming notifications, social media updates, and then I saw it, an email confirmation from Prestige Auto Detailing. The date was 3 months ago, right when the large sum started moving out of my parents' account. The subject line read, "Your full detail and ceramic coating appointment for Mercedes C-Class." A Mercedes? Carson? He drove a beat-up 10-year-old hatchback that was perpetually low on gas. I clicked open the email. It confirmed an appointment, the make and model of the car, and listed the services performed, the works, costing a small fortune. My eyes scanned down to the location of the detailing shop. It was in the city's most affluent district, right next to a string of high-end car dealerships. Dealerships Carson couldn't afford to even window shop at, let alone buy from. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just about him sponging off mom and dad for new clothes. This was something much, much bigger. And he was trying to make me pay for it with my home. The audacity, the sheer, unmitigated gall. My hand tightened into a fist. He wasn't just going to get away with this. Not anymore. The Prestige Auto Detailing email was a blazing arrow pointing directly at Carson's deception. The next morning, I told the real estate agent Mom had sent that I needed a few more days to declutter before she officially listed the house. She was surprisingly understanding, probably used to sellers dragging their feet. That bought me a little more breathing room. I drove out to the address from the email. The detailing shop was exactly where it said it would be, nestled between a gleaming Porsche dealership and a showroom filled with sleek, expensive Audis. I parked across the street, just watching for a while. It was a long shot, but I had to try. I eventually went into the Audi dealership, pretending to browse. "Just looking for some inspiration," I told a young, eager salesman who approached me. "My brother's been talking about upgrading his car, mentioned he was around this area recently, drives an older hatchback, but he's dreaming big." The salesman, probably smelling a potential commission, however distant, became chatty. "Oh, we get a lot of dreamers, and sometimes they become buyers. What's his name? Maybe he popped in." "Carson," I said. "Carson W. Just Carson." I mentally kicked myself for almost saying our surname. He tapped on his tablet. Don't see a Carson in our recent inquiries, but people browse all the time." He then gestured vaguely. "The Mercedes dealership next door does a lot of business, too. Popular choice." Mercedes. The email had specified a Mercedes C-Class. I thanked him and left, feeling a little deflated, but also more certain. He wouldn't have used his real name if he was just browsing, but the car detail was specific. Back home, I took a deep breath and dipped into my shop's emergency savings. It wasn't much, but it was enough to hire one of those online private investigator services that specialized in vehicle registration searches. I typed in Carson's full name and our state, paid the modest fee, and crossed my fingers. The site said it could take 24 to 48 hours. The waiting was agony. That night was the pre-scheduled family dinner at my parents' house, a weekly ritual I usually tried to find excuses to miss. Tonight, I knew I had to go, to keep up appearances. "So, Esme," Mom began, as she served overcooked roast chicken, "Brenda's cousin said your house should sell quickly. She's very optimistic." "That's good," I said, pushing a dry piece of chicken around my plate. Carson naturally couldn't resist a jab. He'd been unusually quiet, mostly smirking into his plate. "Yeah, it's great you're finally contributing something significant, sis. Shame that little online hobby of yours couldn't even cover a decent dinner like this, eh?" He gestured expansively at the mediocre meal. My fork clattered against the plate. I bit back the retort that my little hobby paid my mortgage, something he, living rent-free with our parents, clearly couldn't comprehend. "Now, Carson, be nice," Mom chided gently, but there was no real heat in it. "Your sister is doing her best, and you've been such a rock for us through all this, dear," she added, beaming at him. "So supportive." I nearly choked on my water. Supportive? He was the bloody iceberg that was sinking their financial Titanic. Dad just grunted, engrossed in dissecting his chicken wing. The hypocrisy was suffocating. I excused myself early, pleading a headache. The drive home was filled with a simmering rage. How could they be so blind? Or were they willfully ignorant? The next afternoon, an email pinged into my inbox. Subject: Vehicle registration search results. My heart leaped. I clicked it open. There it was. Carson Williams, registered owner of a silver Mercedes-Benz C300, purchased 3 months ago. The report even included a grainy, time-stamped photo taken from a public parking garage security camera feed the PI service had somehow accessed. It was undeniably Carson, looking pleased as punch, standing next to a gleaming silver sedan. A car that cost more than my parents' combined annual income. A car that screamed fraud. I stared at the photo, at his smug face. The pieces weren't just falling into place, they were slamming together with the force of a battering ram. He hadn't just siphoned off a bit of cash for gadgets, he'd bought a luxury car, and he was going to let me lose my home to cover his tracks. The anger was a cold, hard knot in my stomach now. This wasn't just about getting my house back, this was about justice. This was about making him and them face the truth. The real estate agent could wait. I had more important appointments to make. The proof of Carson's Mercedes lit a fire under me, but it also meant I had to tread even more carefully. My parents, however, were ramping up the pressure cooker. "Esme," the agent called again. Mom's voice crackled over the phone the next morning. "She said you haven't signed the listing agreement yet. Is everything all right, dear? We really need to get this moving." "Just finalizing a few things, Mom," I said, trying to sound busy and responsible. "You know, paperwork." "Well, don't finalize for too long," she replied, her tone sharpening. "Time is of the essence." Later that day, she helpfully dropped by my house, unannounced. She had a stack of brochures in her hand. "I was just passing by the community center," she chirped, handing them to me, "and they had these listings for some lovely little apartments, much more manageable for a single girl like you once all this unpleasantness is over." I flipped through them. They were all tiny, depressing one-bedroom flats in rundown buildings on the other side of town. My stomach churned. "Thanks, Mom. I'll look at them." "Good girl." She patted my cheek, a gesture that felt more like a brand than affection. The walls felt like they were closing in. I needed more than just a picture of Carson with a fancy car. I needed to link it directly to the money disappearing from my parents' accounts. The online bank statements I'd found showed large loan disbursements into their account, which were then quickly transferred out. I needed to know where those loans came from. Carson, meanwhile, was starting to act twitchy. He'd always been arrogant, but now there was an undercurrent of something else. Suspicion, maybe? He'd casually drop by my house more often, asking pointed questions. "Spending a lot of time on that computer, sis," he commented one afternoon, peering over my shoulder. I was actually researching local credit unions and loan companies, trying to see if any of their logos or names matched the vague biller descriptions on the bank statements. I quickly minimized the window. "Just shop stuff," I said. "End-of-month accounts." Right, your little empire." He smirked. "You're not having second thoughts about helping Mom and Dad, are you? Because you know they're really counting on you." His eyes narrowed slightly. "Of course not, Carson," I said, forcing a smile. "Just stressed with everything. Selling a house isn't exactly a walk in the park." He seemed to accept that, but his gaze lingered on my screen for a moment too long before he sauntered off to raid my fridge. He was definitely rattled about something. Was it just the general family stress, or did he suspect I was on to him? The pressure was immense. I was juggling my actual business, the charade of selling my house, and this secret, all-consuming investigation. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. One evening, fueled by coffee and sheer determination, I was in my home office, printing out the crucial bank statements I'd downloaded from my parents' account, the ones showing the loan deposits and the subsequent large withdrawals. I needed hard copies, something tangible. The printer whirred, spitting out page after page. Suddenly, the door creaked open. My heart leaped into my throat. It was Carson. "Hey, Esme, Mom sent me over to get that casserole dish she lent you," he said, his eyes flicking around the room before landing on the printer. I moved fast, almost instinctively. I grabbed a thick stack of my shop's recent invoices and order forms from my desk and slapped them down on top of the freshly printed bank statements just as the last page was emerging. "Oh, hey," I said, trying to sound casual, my pulse hammering against my ribs. "Just doing my taxes. You know how it is." He ambled closer, peering at the top sheet, which was thankfully a legitimate invoice for a large order of handmade soaps. "Taxes, huh? Fun stuff." His gaze drifted to the edge of the papers beneath the invoices. A sliver of a bank logo, a line of figures, was just barely visible. My breath caught. He frowned, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "Looks like a lot of paperwork for your little hobby." "It's growing," I said, my voice a little too bright. "Keeps me busy." I quickly scooped up the entire pile, bank statements and invoices jumbled together, and shoved them into a drawer. "Casserole dishes in the kitchen, top cupboard." He hesitated for a second, his eyes still on the drawer, then shrugged. "Right, thanks." He turned and left. I leaned against the desk, my legs feeling like jelly. That was too close. Way too close. Had he seen enough to be truly alarmed, or had my quick thinking bought me more time? I didn't know, but one thing was certain. I needed to find the final piece of the puzzle, and I needed to do it fast before he, or my parents, forced my hand. The next move had to be mine. Carson didn't mention the printer incident again, but there was a new wariness in his eyes whenever he looked at me. He started asking more questions about the house sale, about the specific bank we'd be using for the equity transfer. I knew I was running out of time. I became a ghost, moving through my days with a singular focus. The photos of Carson with the Mercedes were good, but I needed something more direct. I started paying closer attention to his infrequent social media posts. He wasn't stupid enough to post pictures of the car, but he did check in at a trendy new cafe near the financial district fairly regularly. One afternoon, armed with my phone, I coincidentally happened to be at that same cafe. I ordered a coffee, found a discreet table, and waited. Sure enough, about 20 minutes later, Carson strolled in, looking pleased with himself. He met someone, a flashy guy I didn't recognize, and they sat near the window. As they were leaving, I managed to get a couple of quick, clear photos of Carson walking towards the street, his Mercedes parked brazenly at a meter just a few feet away. The angle even caught part of the license plate. Click. Gotcha. The real breakthrough, though, came from a desperate, late-night gamble. Mom had, in one of her more anxious ramblings about their debt, mentioned the names of a couple of loan companies they'd supposedly dealt with in the past for a small home improvement loan years ago. Friendly Finance and Secure Lend, she'd called them. On a hunch, I visited their websites. Most legitimate financial institutions have online portals for customers. I tried Friendly Finance first. I knew Dad's email, his date of birth, the usual stuff. The security questions were the hurdle. What was the name of your first pet? I remembered them talking about a scruffy terrier named Patch from before I was born. I typed it in. What is your mother's maiden name? Easy. What was the model of your first car? That one stumped me for a bit. Then I recalled Dad grumbling about an old Ford Cortina he'd loved. My breath hitched as the screen changed. Logan successful. I was in. My hands were shaking. I navigated to the loan documents section, and there they were, not old home improvement loans. These were recent, very recent, 3 of them, all taken out in the last 4 months, each for a substantial 5-figure sum. The total was astronomical, easily enough to buy a luxury car and then some, and all in my parents' names, George and Adeline. My blood ran cold as I opened the scanned PDF of the first loan agreement. I scrolled down to the signature line. George's name was there, but it wasn't quite right. Dad's signature was usually a confident, slightly flamboyant scrawl. This was shaky, hesitant, the loops a little too round, the slant slightly off. It was a decent attempt, passable if you weren't looking closely, but I knew my father's signature. I'd seen it on countless school permission slips, birthday checks, official documents. This wasn't it. My mind raced. Carson. It had to be. He lived with them. He'd have access to their mail, their personal information. I pulled out an old birthday card from my desk, one Carson had given me years ago. His handwriting was lazy, a bit sloppy, but certain characteristics jumped out. The way he formed his G, the slightly exaggerated curve of his S. I held the card next to the screen, comparing his writing to the forged signature on the loan document. It was a match. Not a perfect CSI-level match, but close enough for my gut to scream, "Guilty!" I felt sick. He hadn't just taken their money. He'd actively forged their signatures, saddling them with crippling debt they clearly knew nothing about the true extent of, all for a stupid car and a lifestyle he couldn't afford. And they, in their blind favoritism, were ready to throw me to the wolves to fix a problem he created. I immediately called Sarah, my best friend. I'd kept her vaguely in the loop, but now I spilled everything: the car, the bank statements, the forged signatures. "Oh my God, Esme," she breathed, horrified. That's insane. Your own brother?" "I know," I said, my voice trembling. "I feel like I'm going to be sick." "What are you going to do?" she asked. I took a deep breath, the image of the forged signature burning in my mind. "I'm going to expose him." Sarah was silent for a moment. "Are you sure? This will blow up your whole family." "They were ready to blow up my life," I said, a cold, hard resolve settling in. It's time they faced the consequences of his actions and their own blindness. I spent the rest of the night compiling my evidence, printouts of the loan documents with the forged signatures highlighted, the photos of Carson with the Mercedes, copies of the bank statements showing the money flowing in and out, even a printout of that damning car detailing email. I placed everything into a neat, ominous folder. The bank meeting, the one where I was supposed to sign away my house to help the family, was scheduled for the next morning. Mom had called earlier, her voice practically giddy with relief. "Tomorrow, Esme, we can finally put this all behind us." I looked at the folder. Tomorrow, indeed. But it wouldn't be me putting anything behind me. It would be them, finally facing what they'd allowed to happen, what they'd tried to make me pay for. The anger was still there, but now it was accompanied by a strange, steely calm. I knew exactly what I had to do. Sleep was a forgotten concept. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the folder of evidence a heavy weight on my nightstand. Each tick of my alarm clock sounded like a countdown. I replayed the upcoming confrontation in my mind, over and over, trying out different opening lines, imagining their faces. Would Mom scream? Would Dad finally show some backbone? Would Carson even attempt to lie his way out of it when faced with cold, hard proof? My phone buzzed around 11. It was Mom. "Esme, darling, are you all set for tomorrow?" Her voice was unnervingly cheerful, laced with an almost manic relief. "George and I were just saying, it'll be such a weight off our minds. We can finally breathe again. Thanks to you, sweetheart." "All set, Mom," I managed, my own voice a hollow echo of her forced brightness. "See you at the bank." "Wonderful. 9 a.m. sharp. Don't be late." Click. I squeezed my eyes shut. Thanks to me. The irony was a bitter pill. They were thanking me for unknowingly funding their son's joyride while preparing to sacrifice my future. The thought fueled the cold fire in my belly. A few minutes later, another buzz, a text message, from Carson. "Looking forward to tomorrow. You're doing a good thing, sis. Really appreciate it." Followed by a smug-looking smiley face emoji. I threw my phone onto the duvet, a surge of pure, unadulterated rage washing over me. Appreciate it? He appreciated that I was about to lose my home, my security, the one thing I'd built for myself, all so he could continue his charade. The audacity was breathtaking, but the rage quickly cooled, replaced by that strange, icy calm that had become my companion. Let him look forward to it. Let them all. I got out of bed and walked over to my desk, picking up the folder. I opened it, methodically checking each document one last time. The loan applications with those shaky, forged signatures. The printouts of Dad's real signature from old letters, a stark contrast. The glossy photos of Carson beaming beside his silver Mercedes. The bank statements, a clear trail of money flowing in from phantom loans and out to fund his lifestyle. The email from Prestige Auto Detailing. It was all there. A neat, undeniable narrative of deceit and betrayal. I thought back over the years. The countless times Carson's minor scrapes had been smoothed over by Mom and Dad. The way my achievements were met with polite but distant acknowledgement, while Carson's smallest, most mundane accomplishments were lauded as genius. The constant, subtle erosion of my worth in their eyes, always second best, always the responsible one expected to pick up the pieces. This wasn't just about a house or money anymore. This was about every dismissive comment, every overlooked success, every time I'd been made to feel like an afterthought in my own family. This was about reclaiming something far more valuable than property, my dignity, my truth. I finally drifted into a restless sleep for a few hours, the images of their faces, shocked, horrified, betrayed, dancing behind my eyelids. The morning dawned gray and overcast, matching my mood. I dressed carefully, choosing a simple, professional outfit. I wanted to look calm, composed, in control. I made coffee but couldn't drink it. My stomach was a knot of anxiety and anticipation. As I picked up the folder, my hand was surprisingly steady. This was it. No turning back. The thought, instead of terrifying me, brought a strange sense of peace. I was no longer a pawn in their game. Today, I was setting the board. I drove to the bank, the folder resting on the passenger seat beside me like a silent, powerful ally. I pulled into the parking lot, and there they were, already walking towards the entrance, Mom, Dad, and Carson. Mom was chattering animatedly to the bank manager, a portly man with a kind face who I vaguely recognized from a previous visit when I'd opened my business account. His name tag read, Marco Powell. Dad trailed slightly behind, looking uncomfortable but relieved. Carson walked with a swagger, his hands in his pockets, a self-satisfied smirk firmly in place. He saw me get out of my car and actually had the nerve to give me a condescending wink, like we were conspirators in my own financial ruin. I clutched the folder tighter. My heart hammered against my ribs, a wild drumbeat against the impending storm. I took a deep breath and walked towards them, towards the sterile quiet of the bank, towards the moment that would change everything. The air crackled with unspoken words, with years of resentment, with the imminent explosion of a carefully constructed lie. This wasn't just a meeting, it was a reckoning. Marco Powell, the bank manager, ushered us into a small, glass-walled conference room. Please have a seat. Coffee? Water? Mom simpered. Water would be lovely, thank you, Marco. Carson leaned back in his chair, looking for all the world like he owned the place. Dad just looked down at the polished table. I sat opposite them, placing my folder squarely in front of me. Marco began, his tone professional and sympathetic. So, Adeline, George, as we discussed, your current financial situation is quite precarious. Several outstanding personal loans, maxed credit facilities. It's a significant debt load. He glanced at me. And Esme, you've generously agreed to leverage the equity in your property to help consolidate these debts and alleviate the immediate pressure. We have the preliminary paperwork here. He started to slide a sheaf of papers across the table towards me. This was it. My cue. Actually, Marco, I said, my voice surprisingly calm and clear in the quiet room. Before we proceed with selling my house, I believe we need to discuss these debts first, specifically how they came to be. All three of them looked at me, Mom with a flicker of annoyance, Carson with a raised eyebrow of feigned curiosity, Dad with a sort of dazed incomprehension. Marco paused, his hand hovering over the papers. I opened my folder. These loans, I continued, pulling out the first forged loan application from Friendly Finance and placing it in the center of the table. This one, for instance, taken out 4 months ago, in your names, Mom, Dad. Mom frowned. Well, yes, dear, we had to cover some things. Things like a brand new Mercedes C-Class, perhaps? I asked, my gaze flicking to Carson. His confident smirk faltered just a little. I then laid down one of the glossy photos of him beaming beside the silver car. A small gasp escaped Mom. Dad's head jerked up. Carson's face went rigid. Esme, what is the meaning of this? Mom demanded, her voice rising. The meaning, Mom, I said, my voice hardening, is that this signature here, George's signature? It's a forgery. I placed an old signed birthday card from Dad next to the loan document. Compare them. They're close, but not close enough. The color drained from Dad's face. He stared at the two signatures, then at Carson, his mouth falling slightly open. And this loan, I continued, laying down another application, this one from SecureLend, also taken out in your names, also with a forged signature, and another one after that. I spread the documents out, totaling over $70,000. Funny how that's roughly the price of a new Mercedes, isn't it, Carson? Carson's face was now a mask of dawning horror. He looked like a cornered animal. I don't know what you're talking about, he stammered, his eyes darting between me, the papers, and our parents. Oh, I think you do, I said, my voice like ice. I added the printouts of the bank statements, showing the large deposits from these loan companies, followed by equally large withdrawals. The money came into their account, and then, poof, it was gone. Around the same time, you started sporting new designer clothes, a fancy smartwatch, and, of course, this rather expensive car that required prestige auto detailing. I tossed the email confirmation onto the growing pile of evidence. Marco Powell was watching this unfold with wide, shocked eyes, but he remained silent, a stunned observer to our family's implosion. Mom was staring at Carson, her face a mixture of disbelief and dawning, terrible understanding. Carson, she whispered, her voice trembling. What is she saying? She's lying, Carson finally blurted out, his voice cracking. She's making it all up. She doesn't want to sell her precious house, so she's trying to blame me. Am I, Carson? I met his panicked gaze. Then explain the car. Explain these signatures. Explain where $70,000 went, because Mom and Dad certainly don't seem to know. Dad finally spoke, his voice raspy, broken. Carson, son, did you do this? He looked utterly devastated, like his world had just crumbled around him. Carson stared at him, his bravado completely gone, replaced by sheer, unadulterated terror. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, unable to form a coherent denial. The evidence was too damning, too complete. I looked from Carson's terrified face to my mother's aghast expression, to my father's broken one. The silence in the room was heavy, suffocating. Then I turned to my parents. The question isn't about my house anymore, I said, my voice steady, despite the storm of emotions raging inside me. It's about what you're going to do about your son. It's about the fact that he defrauded you, and that you were so quick to believe his lies, so quick to blame my struggling shop, so willing to ruin me to protect him, even from yourselves. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken accusations and shattered illusions. Carson looked like he was about to throw up. Mom just stared, tears welling in her eyes. Dad looked like he'd aged 20 years in 20 minutes. The smugness, the entitlement, the carefully constructed family narrative, it had all come crashing down in a sterile bank office. The dam finally broke. Carson crumpled, burying his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with sobs. I didn't mean for it to get so out of control, he wailed, the words muffled. I was going to pay it back. I just needed a little boost. Mom let out a strangled cry, a sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Carson, how could you, after everything we've done for you? She rounded on him, her earlier shock morphing into a raw, hysterical fury. Your own parents, and you let us blame Esme? You stood there and let us demand she sell her home? Dad just sat there, utterly silent, his face gray. He looked like a statue, frozen in a moment of unbearable pain. The fight seemed to have drained out of him completely, leaving behind a hollow shell. Marco Powell cleared his throat, his professional composure strained. Perhaps, he suggested delicately, his eyes avoiding direct contact with any of us. This is a family matter that needs to be resolved privately. We can reschedule any legitimate financial discussions for a later date, once things are clearer. He gathered the untouched bank paperwork with a quiet efficiency. I stood up, collecting my folder. My job here was done. I think that's a good idea, Marco. Thank you for your time. I didn't look at my family. I couldn't. I just turned and walked out of the conference room, out of the bank, and into the cool, indifferent air outside. The sounds of Mom's escalating tirade and Carson's pathetic whimpers faded behind me. I drove home, the silence in my car a stark contrast to the storm I'd just unleashed. I didn't feel triumphant, not exactly. There was a grim satisfaction, yes, but also a profound sadness. The family I'd known, flawed as it was, had been irrevocably shattered. The fallout was swift, though I only heard about it in piecemeal snippets. Sarah called later that day, having received a frantic, tearful call from my mother. Apparently, one of the loan companies, alerted by Marco Powell about potential fraud after our dramatic exit, had already initiated an investigation. Carson, faced with actual legal repercussions, had confessed to everything, not just to our parents, but to the authorities. He had to sell the Mercedes, of course. It barely covered a fraction of the debt he'd racked up. I heard he was facing charges, though I made it clear I wouldn't be pressing any myself. The loan companies were more than capable of handling that. My parents, forced to confront the full extent of their son's betrayal and their own monumental denial, were devastated. They had to sell their own house, the one filled with a lifetime of memories, to cover the remaining debts. They moved into a small rented apartment, ironically, one very similar to the depressing brochures Mom had so eagerly pressed on me. They tried to reach out. Mom called, her voice thick with tears and guilt-ridden apologies. Esme, I am so sorry. We were blind. We were fools. Can you ever forgive us? Dad sent a short, stilted email, full of remorse and shame. Even Carson, through a mutual acquaintance, tried to send a message, something about being young and stupid and hoping I could understand. I didn't respond directly to any of them. Not yet. The wounds were too raw, the betrayal too deep. I needed space. I needed to breathe. I kept my house, my sanctuary. My online shop, ironically, started to do even better. Orders poured in, as if the universe itself was rewarding my stand. It became a symbol of my independence, my resilience. A few weeks after the bank meeting, I was sitting on my small porch, sipping tea, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple. My phone buzzed. It was Sarah. "Just checking in," she said. "How are you, really?" I took a deep breath. "I'm okay," I said, and for the first time, it felt true. It's quiet, too quiet sometimes, but it's a good quiet. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. Mine was served in a sterile bank office, and yes, there was a certain satisfaction in watching the truth unravel. But the silence in my family albums speaks volumes now. The empty chairs at future holidays, the unspoken words hanging in the air. I chose truth, and in doing so, I chose myself. Some debts, I realized, can never truly be repaid, not in money anyway. But some chains, the ones that bind you to toxic patterns and unearned guilt, can, and absolutely must, be broken. I looked out at the fading light, a sense of hard-won peace settling over me. My future was my own, finally, and that was a victory worth more than any house.
The car ride home was a blur, the scent of hospital bleach still clinging to my clothes, a weirdly comforting smell after days in that sterile environment. My name is Whitney, by the way, and cradled in my arms was Angelo, my son, all 7 pounds of perfect sleepy newness. Damon, my husband, drove, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He hadn't said much since we left, just a tight smile here and there. I figured he was just as overwhelmed as I was. New parent jitters, right? He pulled into the driveway of our house, our home, the place we'd painted, decorated, and dreamed of bringing our baby back to. "We're here," he murmured, finally looking at me, though his gaze skittered away quickly. "Let me get Angelo," I said, my voice thick with emotion. This was it. The start of our new life. Damon fumbled with the door, then rushed to my side to help me out. "Careful, careful," he said, his hand hovering near my arm, but not quite touching. Odd. Inside, the house felt different. Colder somehow. And then I smelled it. Not the familiar scent of our home, or even the lingering aroma of the lemon cleaner I loved. It was a cloying, sickly sweet perfume, so strong it made my stomach churn. It was coming from upstairs, from the nursery. "Damon, what's that smell?" I asked, my steps faltering on the stairs. Angelo stirred in my arms, his tiny face scrunching. "Oh, just freshener," he said too quickly. He practically herded me up the stairs. "You must be exhausted. Let's get Angelo settled." My heart began to thud a nervous rhythm against my ribs. He pushed open the nursery door, and there she was. Sierra, Damon's assistant, standing by Angelo's brand-new crib, a smug little smile on her perfectly made-up face, arranging a pile of blankets I didn't recognize. The source of the perfume. "Surprise!" Sierra chirped, her voice like nails on a chalkboard. "Thought I'd get things ready for the little man." I just stared. My mind went blank. Words wouldn't form. I clutched Angelo tighter. "Damon," I finally managed, my voice a shaky whisper. "What is she doing here?" Damon wouldn't meet my eyes. He shuffled his feet. "Whitney, honey, Sierra is just here to help. With the night feeds, you know? You're going to be so exhausted, and you need your rest to recover." "Help?" I echoed, feeling the blood drain from my face. "Help with what? I'm his mother. I can do the night feeds." Just then a shadow filled the doorway. Valeria, Damon's mother, glided in, her expression a mixture of pity and triumph. "Now, Whitney, dear," she cooed, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Don't get yourself worked up. Damon is just being thoughtful, and a real mother would be grateful for the support. A real mother." The words hit me like a slap. My hands started to shake, not just from fatigue, but from a rising tide of disbelief and fury. Tears welled in my eyes. Grateful? Grateful that my husband's assistant is in my baby's nursery, planning to do my job? "See, Damon?" Valeria said, nodding sagely at him. "She's overwrought. It's the postpartum delirium, just like we talked about. Poor thing. She can't even see when people are trying to help her." "Postpartum delirium?" I choked out, looking from Valeria's smug face to Damon's averted one, and then to Sierra, who was now patting the crib mattress with a proprietary air. "Are you serious? I just had a baby. I'm tired. Yes, I'm emotional. But I'm not delirious." Damon finally spoke, his voice firm but cold. "Whitney, you're not well. You've been through a lot. Sierra is here to make sure Angelo is taken care of, and that you get the rest you desperately need. It's all arranged." "Arranged?" My voice cracked. They were looking at me like I was a broken toy. Something to be managed. then discarded. The way Sierra was already making herself at home. The way Valeria was nodding in agreement with every dismissive word Damon uttered. It was a performance, and I was the unsuspecting audience. No, not the audience. I was the one being written out of the script. They wanted to replace me. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. My tears were real, my shaking hands were real, but the reason for them was a betrayal so profound it stole my breath. They were using my exhaustion, my vulnerability, against me. I need to sit down, I mumbled, feeling my knees buckle. Of course, dear, Valeria said, guiding me out of the nursery, away from my son. You go rest. We'll take care of everything. Sierra shot me a look over Valeria's shoulder, a look of pure, unadulterated victory. As Valeria settled me on the living room sofa, fussing with a blanket, I looked down at Angelo, who had miraculously slept through most of it. His tiny, perfect face. My son. A cold, hard knot began to form in my stomach, a core of ice beneath the swirling chaos of pain and shock. They thought I was broken. They thought I was weak, delirious, easily pushed aside. They were wrong. Later that evening, after I'd been persuaded to take a mild sedative, which I palmed and later flushed, I lay in my bed, the door slightly ajar. My body ached. My heart felt like a shattered piece of glass, but my mind was surprisingly clear. I heard them downstairs, their voices low. Valeria and Damon. She's already halfway gone, Valeria whispered, her voice carrying clearly in the quiet house. A few more weeks of this, a few more episodes, and the judge will see it our way. Sierra is so much more stable, so much better for Angelo. My breath caught. A judge? They were already planning that far ahead. My delirium, their carefully constructed narrative, had to be utterly convincing. If they wanted a mad woman, I'd give them one they'd never forget. And then I'd make them pay. Every last one of them. The next morning, my performance began. When Sierra brought Angelo to me for his morning feed, her smile was saccharine. "Did you have a good rest, Whitney?" she asked, her voice dripping with false concern. I blinked at her, letting my eyes wander vaguely around the room. Rest? Who are you again? I asked, my voice deliberately weak and confused. Sierra's smile faltered for a split second before she plastered it back on. "It's Sierra, Whitney. Damon's assistant? I'm here to help with Angelo." "Oh," I said, then started to cry. Big gulping sobs. My baby. They're trying to take my baby. Valeria appeared in the doorway almost instantly, like a vulture circling. Now, dear. No one is taking your baby. Sierra is just helping. You had a bad night, remember? You were very agitated." I was. I looked from Valeria to Sierra, my expression one of utter bewilderment. I don't remember. I clutched Angelo a little too tightly, making him fuss. "See?" Valeria said to Sierra, a knowing glance passing between them. "She's not herself." To me, she said, "Why don't you let Sierra take Angelo for a bit? You look like you need more sleep." I let them persuade me. As Sierra carried Angelo out, her perfume trailing behind her, I saw Damon watching from the hallway. He gave Sierra a small, almost imperceptible nod. They thought I was crumbling. Perfect. Days melted into a surreal play. I'd forget where I put things. My phone, my glasses, a half-eaten sandwich. I'd burst into tears at the dinner table for no apparent reason, then stare blankly when they asked what was wrong. I'd accuse Damon of whispering about me with Sierra, then apologize profusely for being so paranoid. "You're just tired, honey," Damon would say, patting my hand with a distinct lack of warmth. "It's the hormones. And the delirium," Valeria would add, always nearby, always watching. Her smugness was a physical presence in the house, a constant suffocating weight. They grew bolder, Damon and Sierra started working late in his home office. The door closed, soft laughter sometimes drifting out. One afternoon, I wandered downstairs, feigning disorientation, and saw them on the sofa, his arm around her, her head on his shoulder. They sprang apart when they saw me, Damon's face flushing. "Whitney, you should be resting," he snapped, his voice sharper than usual. I thought I heard Angelo cry," I stammered, backing away. "I'm sorry." Their pitying glances followed me up the stairs. The baby monitor became my lifeline. I'd insisted on having it, telling them I needed to hear Angelo even when he was with Sierra. "It makes me feel less anxious," I'd said, with a carefully crafted tremor in my voice. They'd exchanged one of their looks. "See, she's anxious, unstable," and agreed. The microphone was surprisingly sensitive. I'd lie in bed, pretending to sleep, and listen. "She had another episode today," I heard Damon tell Valeria one evening. "Accused me of trying to poison her tea because it tasted funny. It was just a new herbal blend I'd forgotten I'd bought. The doctor said these things can escalate," Valeria replied, her voice smooth. "We just need to be patient and document everything. Sierra, dear, you're doing wonderfully with Angelo. He's so calm with you, a natural mother." "Thank you, Valeria," Sierra's voice sickeningly sweet. "I just want what's best for him." Each word was a drop of acid, but each word also went into my new secret weapon, a digital diary on a cheap burner tablet I'd hidden under my mattress. I'd bought it weeks before Angelo was born, a nagging premonition I couldn't shake now proving terrifyingly accurate. Under the guise of journaling my feelings for a non-existent therapist, I'd told them I was too overwhelmed to actually call yet. I meticulously documented everything: dates, times, quotes, their actions, their condescending remarks. Every slight, every lie, every piece of evidence of their affair and their gaslighting. The file was password protected with a phrase only I would know: Angelo's Avenger. One evening, Damon came in to check on me. He'd been out. A quick drink with a client, he'd said. He smelled faintly of Sierra's cloying perfume. He tossed his jacket onto the chair. "How are you feeling, Whitney?" he asked, his tone carefully neutral. "Tired," I mumbled, turning my face to the pillow. "Just so tired." He left without another word. After a few minutes, I crept out of bed. His jacket. Something made me reach into the pockets. Keys, wallet, loose change, and a receipt. A flimsy piece of paper from an expensive lingerie store downtown. I unfolded it. Lace bra, matching thong, silk robe. Definitely not my size, and definitely not something a helpful assistant would be receiving from her boss. A cold smile touched my lips. The game was well and truly afoot, and they had no idea I was already several moves ahead. My delirium became a useful cloak for nocturnal explorations. "I get so restless," I'd tell Valeria with a sigh if she found me wandering the hallways at 2 a.m. "I can't seem to settle." She'd just pat my arm, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction at my continued decline, and steer me back towards my room. One such night, drawn by an instinct I couldn't ignore, I drifted toward the nursery. The door was slightly ajar. Peeking in, I saw Sierra asleep in the rocking chair, Angelo asleep in his crib. That wasn't the surprise. The surprise was the small suitcase tucked beside the changing table, a few brightly colored tops spilling out. I pushed the door open a fraction more. Her toiletries were lined up on the small shelf above the sink in the nursery's ensuite bathroom. A bathroom I, Sam, had meticulously planned for my baby. My toothbrush holder was gone, replaced by hers. She hadn't just moved into the nursery. She'd colonized it. Damon's work dinners with Sierra became more frequent, stretching later and later into the night. "Big project. Lots to finalize," he'd say breezily if I dared to ask, my voice laced with the paranoid edge they'd come to expect. "But you smell like her perfume, Damon," I'd whisper, tears welling on cue. Whitney, don't start, he'd snap, his patience wearing thin, which was exactly what I wanted. You're imagining things. Sierra's a colleague. That's it. But the late nights? We're working. What part of that don't you understand? He'd sigh dramatically. Honestly, this is exhausting. I'm trying to provide for my family, and all I get is suspicion. His dismissals, his increasingly flimsy excuses, were all dutifully recorded on the voice memo app on my burner phone, which I kept tucked into the waistband of my pajamas. I'd accidentally leave it recording during our conversations. The audio quality wasn't perfect, but his contempt and my feigned confusion came through loud and clear. One evening, Valeria offered me my nighttime tea. "This will help you sleep, dear," she said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "You've been so on edge." I took the cup, my hand trembling convincingly. "Thank you, Valeria. You're so kind to me." As she turned away, I pretended to take a sip, then carefully palmed the small white pill I'd seen her subtly drop into the steaming liquid when she thought I wasn't looking. Later, I flushed it. That night, I feigned deep, untroubled sleep, my breathing even, my body still. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I slipped out of bed, my bare feet silent on the carpeted hallway. Their voices, low and conspiratorial, drifted up from the kitchen. Valeria and Sierra. "He's finally realizing how much better you are for him, for Angelo," Valeria was saying, her voice laced with smug satisfaction. "It was always meant to be this way. Your family, dear. Blood is thicker than water, and certainly thicker than whatever temporary infatuation he had with her." Sierra murmured something I couldn't quite catch, but Valeria's next words were chillingly clear. "Don't you worry your pretty little head about Whitney. She's practically a ghost already. Another few weeks, and Damon will be free to have the life he deserves, with a woman who truly understands him, and a mother for Angelo, who isn't broken." Family? Sierra was family? My mind raced. How? The opportunity came a few days later. Valeria was in the garden, supervising a landscaper Damon had hired to tidy things up. Her iPad lay on the kitchen counter, unlocked. She was always so careless, so confident in her control. My heart hammered against my ribs. I glanced around. Damon was supposedly on a conference call in his office. Sierra was napping with Angelo. My fingers flew across the screen, opening her email. I searched for Sierra's name. My breath hitched. There it was. An email chain, not with Sierra, but with a woman named Carol, Sierra's mother. The dates went back nearly a year, before Angelo was even conceived. "Sierra is the perfect choice, Cynthia," Carol had written to Valeria, Valeria's first name, which I rarely heard. "She's smart, ambitious, and she's always adored Damon from afar, you know, being a distant cousin and all. This is her chance, and ours, to see her settled with a good man, and for Damon to finally have the family he deserves, away from that unstable influence." Valeria's reply. "Indeed, it's taken some maneuvering, but Whitney's pregnancy provided the perfect opportunity to introduce Sierra into the household. Once the baby arrives, Whitney's condition will make the transition much smoother. Damon is already seeing how much more capable Sierra is. Distant cousin. Handpicked. This wasn't just an affair Damon had stumbled into. This was a calculated long con, a dynastic takeover orchestrated by Valeria, with Sierra and her mother as willing accomplices. They hadn't just seized an opportunity, they had created it. My postpartum delirium wasn't just a convenient excuse. It was a planned-for part of their strategy. The cold fury that had been simmering inside me ignited into a raging inferno. They wouldn't just be exposed, they would be annihilated. The emails burned into my brain. Sierra wasn't just some opportunistic homewrecker. She was a pre-selected replacement, a pawn in Valeria's twisted game of family chess. My resolve, already hardening, now felt like tempered steel. But the sheer scale of their deception, the calculated cruelty of it all, made me realize I couldn't dismantle this fortress of lies on my own. A few days later, I feigned a particularly bad episode. I forgot how to use the coffee machine, then burst into tears when Damon tried to help, accusing him of treating me like an idiot. I think I need to see Dr. Evans, I sobbed, naming my OB-GYN. Maybe she can help me. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Valeria and Damon exchanged a quick, triumphant glance. Of course, dear, Valeria said smoothly. That's a very good idea. But you're in no state to drive. Perhaps your sister could take you? Rachel always did have a calming effect on you. Perfect. That was exactly what I'd hoped they'd suggest. Yes, I whispered. Rachel, can you call her? I don't think I can. I let my voice trail off, my hand fluttering weakly. My sister Rachel arrived an hour later, her face etched with concern as Damon and Valeria gave her a heavily edited version of my condition. She's just been so fragile since Angela was born, Damon said, shaking his head sadly. We're terribly worried. In the car, once we were safely away from the house, the dam broke. Rachel, they're trying to take Angelo from me, I choked out, the words tumbling over each other as I relayed the whole nightmarish story. Sierra, the delirium, Valeria's plotting, the emails. Rachel listened, her knuckles white on the steering wheel, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief, then to cold, hard anger. That witch, she seethed, referring to Valeria. And Damon, how could he? Whitney, this is insane. I know, I said, wiping my eyes. They think I'm falling apart. They think they're winning. But I have evidence, Rach. So much evidence. What are you going to do? I'm going to fight, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. But I need help. Real help. Rachel didn't hesitate. I know someone, she said, her jaw set. A lawyer, Lee Knight. She's a shark, Whitney. The best family lawyer in the city. She helped my friend Sarah through a nightmare divorce. If anyone can help you, Lee can. The next day, under the guise of a follow-up appointment that Rachel insisted I needed for my nerves, I met Lee. Her office was sleek and modern, and Lee herself was sharp, impeccably dressed, with eyes that missed nothing. I poured out my story again, this time with the printouts of the emails, the audio files on a USB stick, and my meticulously kept digital diary. Lee listened intently, her expression unreadable. When I finally finished, she leaned back in her chair. Whitney, she said, her voice calm but firm, what they are doing is unconscionable. This isn't just gaslighting, it's constructive abandonment, emotional abuse, and potentially conspiracy to defraud you of your parental rights. Their postpartum delirium diagnosis is a self-serving fabrication. A wave of relief so profound it almost buckled my knees washed over me. Someone believed me. Someone saw it. So, what do? I asked, my voice hoarse. We fight, Lee said, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips, and we use their arrogance against them. You continue to play the part they've cast for you. Let them think they have you exactly where they want you. Meanwhile, we gather every shred of evidence, meticulously, quietly. We build an irrefutable case. Back at the house, the pressure cooker environment intensified. Damon and Valeria started gently suggesting I sign some papers. Just temporary, Whitney, Damon explained, his arm around Sierra, who stood silently by. Giving me full medical decision-making authority for Angelo. Just until you're feeling stronger. It's for his protection. In case, He tapped his head meaningfully. And we've been thinking, Valeria chimed in, her voice like silk. This house holds so many Difficult memories for you now. Perhaps a fresh start would be good. Damon found a lovely smaller place, much easier for him and Sierra to manage with the baby. They were openly discussing selling our home, my home, and moving on without me, right in front of me. My delirious act was my shield. I just nodded vaguely, tears streaming. "Whatever you think is best, Damon," I mumbled. A few days later, my personal phone, the one they knew about, disappeared. "Oh, Whitney," Damon said, with an exaggerated sigh of exasperation when I frantically searched for it. "You've probably just misplaced it again in your confusion. Don't worry about it. You don't really need it right now, do you? It's just another thing to stress you out." He had no idea about the burner phone, safely tucked away. He had no idea that every photo, every recording, every damning entry in my diary was already backed up to a secure cloud server, the password known only to me and Lee Knight. Let him think he'd cut off my communication. He was only tightening the noose around his own neck. Lee's next piece of advice was blunt. "Follow the money, Whitney." Men like Damon, especially when guided by someone like Valeria, rarely plan an exit strategy that doesn't involve securing their financial future, usually at their spouse's expense. So, one afternoon, while Damon was at a crucial client meeting, which I suspected was a leisurely lunch with Sierra, and Valeria was running errands, likely scouting new neighborhoods for Damon and his new family, I feigned a muddled attempt to understand our bills. "Damon handles all of that, dear," Sierra said, bouncing Angelo on her hip when I wandered into the kitchen looking confused. "You don't need to worry your pretty little head about it." The condescension was thick enough to spread on toast. "But I want to see," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "Sometimes I forget what we spend money on." I let a tear escape. "It makes me anxious." Sierra sighed, a put-upon expression crossing her face. "Fine. His laptop is in the study. But don't mess anything up, okay? He gets really agitated when his files are disorganized." "Okay," I whispered, shuffling towards the study. Damon's laptop was, of course, password protected. But I knew his passwords. Or rather, I knew his patterns. His mother's birthday, his old football jersey number, the name of his first dog. It took me 3 tries. Bingo. What I found made my blood run cold. It wasn't just about replacing me as a wife and mother. It was about leaving me with nothing. He'd been systematically draining our joint savings account for months, transferring large sums into a newly opened account. An account under 2 names, Damon and Sierra. Business statements showed diverted profits, invoices fudged, all painting a picture of a man methodically stripping away every financial safety net I thought we had. He was building a new life on the ashes of ours, and planning to leave me destitute in the wreckage. The sheer audacity of it, the cold, calculated betrayal, took my breath away. This went far beyond a simple affair. This was grand larceny, disguised as a midlife crisis. I meticulously photographed every incriminating statement, every transfer slip, every doctored invoice with my burner phone, the quiet clicks of the camera shutter sounding like gunshots in the silent house. As I was closing down the files, a flicker of movement outside the study door caught my eye. Sierra. She was standing there, watching me, her expression unreadable. Had she heard the clicking? "Just trying to understand," I stammered, quickly closing the laptop, my heart pounding. She didn't say anything for a moment, just looked at me, then at the laptop, then back at me. Then a strange thing happened. A flicker of something. Was it doubt? Fear? Crossed her face. "Valeria's on her way back," she said, her voice flat, devoid of its usual saccharine sweetness. "You should probably go back to your room." She turned and walked away without another word. It was a small thing, but it planted a seed. Sierra had seemed less triumphant lately, less smug. I'd caught her arguing quietly with Damon a few times, her voice sharp, his placating. Once, I saw Valeria give Sierra a curt command about Angelo's feeding schedule, and Sierra's face had tightened, a brief flash of resentment in her eyes before she smoothed it over with a compliant, "Yes, Valeria." Perhaps the golden cage Valeria had built for her was starting to feel a little too restrictive. Perhaps she was realizing she wasn't a cherished partner in this scheme, but just another, more pliable pawn. It was a sliver of a possibility, but one I filed away. The true depth of their depravity, however, was yet to be fully revealed. A few days later, driven by a chilling premonition, I delved deeper into Damon's laptop. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for, just a feeling, a cold dread. I found it buried in a nested series of folders, innocuously labeled contingency plans. It wasn't just about custody. It wasn't just about money. It was about my freedom. The folder contained a detailed plan to have me involuntarily committed to a private psychiatric facility. There were scanned doctor's notes, clearly fabricated, detailing my supposed rapidly deteriorating mental state. There were draft affidavits from concerned friends, names I vaguely recognized as Valeria's sycophantic bridge club members, attesting to my erratic behavior and delusional episodes. They were planning to use the court's declaration of my unfitness not just to gain custody of Angelo, but to lock me away, to silence me completely. I stared at the screen, the words blurring. This wasn't just a messy divorce. This was a plot to utterly destroy me, to erase me from my own life, from my son's life. The air in the room felt thick, suffocating. They wouldn't just take my son. They would take my sanity, my liberty, my very identity. The game had just escalated to a terrifying new level, and my madness had to be more convincing than ever. The official-looking envelope arrived by courier. Damon intercepted it at the door, his expression carefully neutral as he signed. He brought it into the living room, where I was listlessly staring out the window, Angelo asleep in the bassinet beside me. Valeria and Sierra were there too, a united front of false sympathy. "Whitney," Damon began, his voice gentle, the kind one uses with a frightened animal or a very small child. "There's something we need to discuss." He held out the envelope. I looked at it, then at him, my eyes wide and confused. What is it?" "It's from our lawyer, dear," Valeria said, stepping forward. "It's about Angelo." Sierra shifted uncomfortably, her gaze fixed on a point just past my shoulder. She looked pale. Damon opened the envelope and took out the documents. "Whitney, we've had to make a very difficult decision," he said, his voice laced with feigned sorrow. "For Angelo's sake, and for yours, really." He laid the papers on the coffee table. Summons, petition for full custody, affidavits. My name, my severe postpartum psychosis, my inability to care for myself or the child, all spelled out in cold legal jargon. "We're filing for full custody of Angelo," Damon stated, his eyes for once meeting mine directly. They were cold, devoid of any emotion save for a chilling resolve. "You need professional help, Whitney. Serious help. You're not well enough to look after him." This was it, the moment they'd been working towards, the culmination of their gaslighting, their manipulation. I stared at the papers, then at their faces. Damon, the picture of a heartbroken husband forced to make an impossible choice. Valeria, radiating smug triumph disguised as concern. Sierra, looking like she might be sick, but standing her ground beside Damon. Then, I gave them the performance of a lifetime. My breath hitched. A low moan escaped my lips. My eyes filled with tears. Real ones this time, fueled by a potent cocktail of rage and adrenaline. I snatched up the papers, my hands shaking violently. No, you can't," I shrieked, the sound raw and desperate. "He's my baby. You can't take him from me." I jumped up, stumbling, clutching the papers to my chest. "You're lying. I'm fine. I'm his mother." I backed away from them, my eyes wild. "You're trying to trick me. You're all against me." "Whitney, calm down," Damon said, taking a step towards me, his hands outstretched placatingly. "Stay away from me," I screamed, shrinking back. I let the papers scatter to the floor. "You hate me. You all hate me." I sank to my knees, dissolving into racking hysterical sobs, rocking back and forth. "My baby, my baby, my baby." Valeria exchanged a significant look with Damon. "See?" her expression clearly said. "She's completely unhinged. They let me cry for a while. Then Valeria gently helped me to my room, clucking about how this was all too much for my fragile state. They were so confident, so sure they had won. Little did they know, Lee Knight had already filed our counter-petition that very morning. A petition loaded with every piece of evidence I had painstakingly gathered. Audio recordings, financial statements, copies of Valeria's emails, screenshots of the contingency plan to have me committed. It was a mountain of their deceit, ready to avalanche down on them. The days leading up to the hearing were a blur. Outwardly, I was a wreck, barely eating, prone to sudden weeping fits, forgetting conversations moments after they happened. Inwardly, I was a coiled spring of anticipation. Lee and I had several quiet, intense strategy sessions via burner phone calls when I was napping or too distressed to leave my room. We went over every detail, every piece of evidence, ensuring it was irrefutable, undeniable. "They're going to paint you as completely unstable," Lee warned. "You need to be prepared for that. Their entire case rests on it." "Let them," I'd said, my voice cold. "The crazier they make me sound, the harder they'll fall when the truth comes out." I spent hours just looking at Angelo, sleeping peacefully in his crib, oblivious to the storm raging around him. His tiny, perfect face, his little sighs, the way his fingers curled around mine. He was my anchor, my reason, my strength. For him, I would walk through fire. For him, I would become the monster they thought I was, then turn that monstrosity back on them tenfold. The night before the hearing, I was helping Valeria clear the dinner dishes, my movements slow and clumsy. She was humming, a self-satisfied little tune. "Damon promised me," I said, my voice barely a whisper, my eyes downcast, as if sharing a precious secret hope. "He promised we'd always be a family. Me, him, and Angelo." Valeria stopped humming. She turned, a look of pity mixed with utter disdain on her face. Then she laughed. A short, sharp, dismissive sound. "Oh, Whitney," she said, shaking her head. "You poor, delusional girl." That laugh, that single arrogant sound. It was the last piece of fuel my fire needed. Tomorrow, they would learn just what a delusional girl was truly capable of. Tomorrow the show would end, and the reckoning would begin. The courtroom was cold, impersonal. Damon, Valeria, and Sierra sat at one table with their lawyer, a slick, confident man who oozed condescension. I sat with Lee at another, my hands clasped tightly in my lap. I looked small, fragile, exactly as planned. Their lawyer, Mr. Davies, went first. He painted a devastating picture. "Your Honor, we are here today because Whitney, tragically, is suffering from a severe case of postpartum psychosis. She is a danger to herself, and more importantly, to her infant son, Angelo." He presented his evidence, my erratic text to Damon, carefully selected and stripped of all context. "She accuses my client of infidelity one moment, then begs for his forgiveness the next," Davies intoned gravely. Witness statements from Valeria's friends, detailing my public outbursts and confused ramblings, all lies or gross exaggerations of my carefully staged performances. He even produced photographs, ones Damon must have taken when I was at my most exhausted, my hair unkempt, dark circles under my eyes, making me look disheveled and lost. "Is this the face of a competent mother, Your Honor?" Sierra took the stand, her voice trembling. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I didn't want to believe it at first, she sniffled. But Whitney, she became so unstable. She'd forget things, accuse us of terrible things. I was just trying to help with Angelo, but she saw me as a threat. I'm so worried about him. He needs a calm, stable environment. She shot a look of pure, feigned anguish towards Damon. Damon testified next, the picture of a heartbroken, responsible husband. I love my wife, Your Honor, he said, his voice thick with emotion. But I love my son more. And Whitney she's not the woman I married. Not anymore. This is the hardest thing I've ever had to do, but I have to protect Angelo. I watched them, my expression carefully blank, occasionally letting a tear trace a path down my cheek. They were good. I had to give them that. Their narrative was seamless, convincing. I saw the judge, a stern-faced woman in her 50s, looking at me with a mixture of pity and concern. Then, it was Lee's turn. She rose, calm and composed. Your Honor, she began, her voice clear and steady, what you have just heard is a meticulously crafted fiction, designed to defraud my client of her child, her home, and her sanity. We will now present the truth. One by one, Lee dismantled their lies. She played the audio recordings. Damon's dismissive, gaslighting responses to my paranoid questions. Valeria and Sierra's hushed kitchen conversation about me being a ghost already, and Sierra being family. The courtroom was silent, save for the damning words echoing from the speakers. Damon's face paled. Valeria shifted uneasily. Lee presented the transcripts of my digital diary, detailing every instance of their cruelty, every condescending remark, every calculated move to undermine me. She showed the financial records, the drained joint accounts, the new account in Damon and Sierra's names, the diverted business funds. This isn't just about custody, Your Honor, Lee stated. It's about greed and a premeditated plan to leave Ms. Hayes destitute. She then projected the email chain between Valeria and Sierra's mother onto the large screen. The dynastic takeover, as I'd come to call it, laid bare for all to see. Sierra, the distant cousin, the perfect choice to replace the unstable influence. Sierra stared at the screen, her face ashen, then buried her face in her hands, genuine sobs racking her body this time. Valeria looked like she'd been slapped. But Lee had saved the best for last. Your Honor, Lee said, her voice dropping slightly, drawing everyone's attention. My client, fearing for her safety and suspecting she was being manipulated in ways she couldn't yet prove, took certain precautions. This included installing a discreet security camera in her living room. A collective gasp went through the small public gallery. Damon's jaw literally dropped. Valeria went a ghastly shade of gray. We have footage from several occasions, Lee continued, but one in particular is most illuminating. The video played. The living room. Me, looking tired, accepting a cup of tea from Valeria. And then, clear as day, Valeria, her back mostly to the camera but her actions unmistakable, glancing around before quickly, furtively, crushing a small white pill and stirring it into my teacup before handing it to me. Her voice, captured by the camera's microphone, was chillingly clear as she later said to Damon, who had just entered the room, "This will help her rest and make our case stronger. The more confused she is, the better." The courtroom erupted. Shouts of, "Oh my God!" and "Did you see that?" Damon stared at the screen, then at his mother, his face a mask of disbelief and horror. Valeria looked like she was about to faint. Sierra was openly weeping, no longer acting. The judge banged her gavel. Order! Order in the court! Her face was a thundercloud. She looked at the screen, then at Valeria, her eyes like chips of ice. The silence that followed was deafening, broken only by Sierra's choked sobs. After a long, tense moment, the judge spoke. her voice dangerously quiet. "We will take a brief recess." "Officer," she said, gesturing to the bailiff, "I want you to remain with Mrs. Willis." "Mrs. Willis?" She addressed Valeria directly, her voice like frozen steel. "When we reconvene, we will be discussing more than just custody. We will be discussing potential charges of assault and endangerment." The recess felt like an eternity, but when the judge returned, her expression was resolute. The rest of the hearing was a formality. Mr. Davies, Damon's slick lawyer, looked like he'd been run over by a truck, his earlier confidence completely gone. He offered a few feeble attempts at damage control, but it was like trying to plug a dam with a teacup. The judge's ruling was swift and decisive. Sole legal and physical custody of the minor child, Angelo, is awarded to his mother, Whitney, she declared, her voice ringing with authority. A permanent restraining order is hereby issued against Damon and Valeria, prohibiting any contact with Whitney or Angelo. My breath hitched. I'd won. Angelo was safe. He was mine. But the judge wasn't finished. "Regarding the evidence of financial malfeasance," she continued, her gaze fixing on Damon, "this court will be forwarding all pertinent documents to the district attorney's office for investigation into fraud and embezzlement. And Mrs. Willis," she said, turning her icy stare on Valeria, who was now flanked by the bailiff, "you will be taken into custody immediately pending formal charges of assault with a dangerous substance and child endangerment. Your actions are an affront to decency and the law." Valeria let out a strangled cry as the bailiff gently but firmly took her arm. Damon just sat there, a broken man, staring blankly ahead as his world imploded. His career, built on an image of respectability, was in tatters. His reputation, annihilated in a public courtroom. Sierra, through her lawyer, quickly offered a plea. She broke down completely on the stand during a subsequent hearing, confessing how Valeria had manipulated her, playing on her familial connection and her ambition, promising her a life with Damon and Angelo. She admitted her role, but painted herself as another victim of Valeria's machinations. In exchange for her full testimony against both Damon and Valeria in their upcoming criminal trials, she received a lighter sentence, probation and community service. She vanished from our lives shortly after, a ghost of a different kind, hopefully to learn that shortcuts to happiness often lead to dead ends. The house, once my dream home, now felt tainted by their deceit. Lee, true to her shark-like reputation, ensured it was sold quickly, and the proceeds, along with a hefty settlement from Damon that accounted for the stolen funds and emotional distress, were placed firmly in my name. Angelo and I moved, not to a grand mansion, but to a bright, airy apartment in a new neighborhood, filled with sunlight and the scent of fresh paint, not cloying perfume. Rachel helped me decorate, her laughter echoing in the rooms, chasing away the last of the shadows. There are days, of course, when the phantom scent of Sierra's perfume drifts by on a breeze, or I hear an echo of Valeria's dismissive laugh in a stranger's voice. The betrayal was a deep wound, and scars remain. Sometimes, late at night, when Angelo is sleeping soundly, I sit by the window and look out at the city lights, and the sheer audacity of what they tried to do still makes my breath catch. They tried to erase me, to paint me as mad, to steal my child and my future. But then Angelo wakes, his little arms reaching for me, his gummy smile pure sunshine. I pick him up, his warm, solid weight a comfort against me, and I know, with every fiber of my being, that every tear, every feigned episode, every terrifying moment of my performance was worth it. My postpartum delirium, their weapon of choice against me, became my shield, my strategy, my path to liberation. The revenge was complete, not in a fiery, destructive way, but in the cold, hard light of justice. Damon faces financial ruin and likely jail time. Valeria, stripped of her societal standing and facing serious charges, will spend her twilight years paying for her cruelty. They didn't just lose, They were exposed for the hollow, manipulative people they truly were. It didn't magically heal all the wounds. Trust is a fragile thing, easily shattered, and mine took a beating. But justice brought a certain kind of peace, a quiet satisfaction in knowing their carefully constructed world had crumbled under the weight of their own lies. My story isn't really about forgiveness. Not yet, anyway. Maybe that will come with time. Maybe it won't. It's about survival. It's about a mother's love, fiercer and more cunning than any of them could have ever imagined. It's about ensuring that those who try to destroy you, who try to rewrite your narrative with their poison, face the full, unvarnished consequences of their actions. And sometimes, the best therapy isn't found in a doctor's office, but in a well-executed plan that brings the villains to their knees. They wanted a madwoman. I simply showed them what happens when you push one too far.
I watched my husband of 12 years raise his champagne glass, basking in the applause of our guests, and knew this would be our last celebration together. Not that he realised it yet. My name is Alina, and I'd spent the past month planning this promotion party down to the last detail. The crystal glasses caught the evening light perfectly, casting prismatic shadows across our open-concept living room. The catering was immaculate, the guest list carefully curated. Everything had to be perfect, not for Quentin, but for what would come after. "To my beautiful wife," Quentin announced, turning to me with that $1,000,000 smile, "who supported me every step of the way." I smiled back, ignoring the way his mother Sonia's lips tightened at his words. She stood near the marble fireplace I'd picked out 3 years ago, wearing an expression like she'd tasted something sour. "Darling," she cut in, stepping forward, "don't forget to thank the board members who are here tonight. They're the ones who recognized your potential." I took a slow sip of champagne, watching the dynamic play out. 12 years of watching, really. 12 years of being the quiet, supportive wife who gave up her interior design career to support his dreams, who hosted the parties, remembered the birthdays, managed the social calendar that kept him climbing the corporate ladder. "Of course, Mother." Quentin turned away from me, launching into another speech about corporate synergy and future prospects. His sister Stella sidled up to me, designer heels clicking on the hardwood floors. "Quite a spread you've put together, Alina, though I might have gone with the other catering company. The one that did my husband's CEO celebration." "This one suited our budget better," I replied mildly, watching her eyes narrow at the implied financial comparison. The party flowed around us like an orchestrated dance. Quentin's brother Trevor worked the room, probably hunting for job leads. Stella's husband bragged about his latest acquisition. And I kept smiling, topping off glasses, playing the perfect hostess while catching snippets of whispered conversations. "Can't have someone so ordinary representing the family now. Executive position requires a certain image. Time for him to upgrade in all areas." Around 10, as the last board member left, Sonia made her move. She cornered me in the kitchen while I was arranging leftover hors d'oeuvres into containers. "Alina, dear, we need to talk." Her voice dripped with artificial sweetness. "Quentin, come here." My husband appeared, slightly drunk and loose-limbed. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Now that Quentin's made executive vice president, certain changes are necessary, Sonia continued. "The family has discussed this at length. You've been adequate as a wife during his climbing years, but this position requires someone more suited to high society." I set down the container I was holding, very carefully. "I see. Don't make this difficult," Quentin finally spoke, still looking somewhere over my left shoulder. "We've already found you a nice apartment downtown, 3 months paid rent, very generous severance package." "Severance package?" I repeated, "like I'm being fired from a marriage." "Don't be crude," Sonia snapped. "We expect you to be out by the end of the week. The house will need to be ready for redecorating." I looked around our kitchen, my kitchen, taking in the custom backsplash I'd designed, the high-end appliances I'd researched for months. Then I looked at my husband, this man I'd invested 12 years in, who was now swaying slightly and checking his phone. "When?" I asked quietly. "What? When did you start planning this?" Sonia answered for him. "That's irrelevant. What matters is you'll leave quietly, with dignity. Unless you'd prefer we involve lawyers." I felt a smile spread across my face, small, serene, nothing like the screaming they clearly expected. "No need for lawyers, not yet anyway." I untied my apron and hung it precisely on its hook. "I'll pack a bag tonight." The relief on their faces was almost comical. Quentin actually looked surprised. He'd clearly expected more of a fight. But then, he'd never really known me, had he? Not really. Not the way my grandmother had, when she'd taught me about protecting myself, about playing the long game. "Well," I said, heading for the stairs, "I should start packing." "Alina," Quentin called after me, a hint of confusion in his voice. "You're taking this better than expected." I paused on the third step, looking back at them. Mother and son, standing in my kitchen, already discussing paint colours and renovation plans. "Oh, I believe in karma," I said softly, "and karma always collects its debts." They laughed, the sound echoing off the imported Italian tiles I'd spent months sourcing. Let them laugh. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, I packed exactly one suitcase, just enough clothes for a week, my laptop, and the small wooden box my grandmother had given me before she died. Behind me, I could hear Sonia directing the movers she'd already hired to refresh the house. "Alina, darling," she called up the stairs, "don't forget to leave the spare keys on the counter." I pulled out my phone and dialed a familiar number. "Lincoln, I'm ready for that meeting now." "Finally," my lawyer replied. "I've had the paperwork ready for months." Downstairs, I found Quentin in his home office, already interviewing interior designers. A young woman with perfect highlights was spreading fabric swatches across his desk. "I'm heading out," I announced from the doorway. He barely looked up. "The apartment keys are on the kitchen counter, 3 months like we discussed." "That's generous of you," I said, keeping my voice neutral, using my kitchen counter to leave keys to an apartment I never asked for. That made him look up, confusion flickering across his face. "Your kitchen? Alina, don't start being difficult now." "Wouldn't dream of it." I turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, by the way, your mother might want to hold off on hiring contractors, just for a day or two." Before he could respond, I walked out, leaving my house keys on my kitchen counter. I didn't need them anymore. Lincoln's office was exactly as I remembered it, all dark wood and leather, with a view of downtown that my father used to love. He stood as I entered, giving me a quick hug before getting down to business. "You've got perfect timing," he said, pulling out a thick folder. "The property tax assessment just came in, adds another layer of legitimacy to our calculations." I sat down, opening my grandmother's wooden box. Inside were the original deed to the land, the construction contracts, and, most importantly, the agreement Quentin had signed 3 years ago without reading, too busy with a conference call to do more than scribble his signature where I pointed. "How long before they realise?" I asked. Lincoln grinned, spreading the documents across his desk. "The cease and desist letter will arrive by courier this afternoon. Certified mail, very official. Then we give them 48 hours to respond before filing the formal eviction notice. And they can't fight it? Please, Alina, your grandmother was a genius. The land trust she set up is ironclad. You own the land outright, and that ridiculous temporary transfer of property rights agreement Quentin signed gives you full control of the house too." He leaned back, looking satisfied. "They don't have a legal leg to stand on." My phone buzzed. A text from my friend Gianna. "Just saw Q's relationship status change to, it's complicated. Want me to do some digging?" I showed Lincoln the message. Think it's too soon? For what you've got planned. Perfect timing. Let them dig their own graves first. I texted back, yes, but quietly. The rest of the day passed in a blur of signatures and legal documents. By evening, I was checked into the Four Seasons, not the sad little apartment Quentin had arranged, when my phone exploded with notifications. First Stella, what the hell is this legal notice? Call me immediately. Then Trevor, sis, we need to talk. This isn't cool. Finally, Quentin, my lawyer says this is a joke. Please tell me it's a joke. I turned off my phone and ordered room service instead. The salmon was excellent. The next morning, I met Gianna for coffee. She slid her tablet across the table, showing me a fresh Instagram post. Quentin at last night's charity gala, arm around a willowy blonde, wearing a dress that probably cost us more than that apartment he'd tried to stick me with. Meet Desiree, Gianna said. Influencer, aspiring model, and apparently your replacement. They've been DMing for months. Months, I repeated, sipping my latte. How interesting. Want me to run the story? Not yet. Let's wait for... My phone rang. Lincoln. They're here, he said, sounding amused. All of them. Sonia's threatening to sue everyone in the building. I checked my watch. Right on schedule. Put me on speaker. I heard the click. Then Sonia's voice. Absolutely ridiculous. We'll have your license for this. Hello, Sonia, I said calmly. I assume you've had time to review the property documents? Silence fell. Alina. Quentin's voice shook slightly. What are you doing? Collecting what's mine. You have 48 hours to vacate my property before I file formal eviction proceedings. And yes, mother dearest, this is completely legal. You might want to ask Quentin about that document he signed 3 years ago, the one he was too busy to read. You manipulative little... Sonia began. Goodbye, Sonia. Quentin, do try not to damage anything while moving out. I'll be doing a full inventory. I hung up and looked at Gianna. Now we can start working on that story. 3 years earlier, I stood in what would become our dream home, watching Quentin wave away the contractor's concerns about the foundation plans. Just handle it, he'd said, already walking away with his phone pressed to his ear. My wife deals with all that decorating stuff. The contractor, Mike, turned to me with raised eyebrows. Mrs. Riley, about these modifications. The reinforced foundation stays, I said firmly, remembering my grandmother's words about building on solid ground, both literally and figuratively. And everything gets filed exactly as we discussed. Now, sitting in Gianna's office, I watched her scroll through old photos of the house's construction, every detail documented, every change logged and filed with both the city and my lawyer. This is gold, Gianna said, clicking through the images. Look at this one, Quentin signing papers while on his phone, not even looking. And here's Sonia criticising your choices while you're literally paying for everything. My grandmother's inheritance built that house, I said quietly, every penny documented, every transaction traced. Speaking of traces, Gianna turned her laptop around. Your replacement's been busy. Desiree's Instagram feed filled the screen. Photos of her and Quentin at charity events, private dinners, exclusive clubs, all dated weeks before I'd been thrown out. The latest post showed her wearing a designer dress in my living room, caption reading, New chapter, new home, Saksha blessed. She works fast, I noted. Want to work faster? Gianna's fingers hovered over her keyboard. One anonymous tip to my lifestyle column about a corporate executive's suspicious timeline. Not yet. Let's see how they handle the eviction notice first. My phone buzzed. Lincoln sending updates. The certified letter had been delivered, and Quentin's lawyer was already trying to negotiate. They're offering to buy the land, Lincoln's message read. Lowball offer? Should I laugh now or wait for the meeting? I texted back, let them sweat. Gianna leaned back in her chair. Remember when you first suspected this might happen, right after his first promotion? I did remember. It was during another party, watching Sonia parade potential dates in front of Quentin despite my presence. I'd gone home and called my grandmother that night. "Never trust a man who lets his mother shop for your replacement," she'd said, "but trust the law, and always, always read the fine print." The next day, she'd introduced me to Lincoln. My phone buzzed again. Stella this time. "This is ridiculous. Mother's having chest pains from the stress. You need to stop this now." I showed Gianna the message. She snorted. Funny how they only care about stress when it's affecting them. "Should have thought about that before they tried to upgrade me," I replied, then forwarded Stella's message to Lincoln. "Documentation of harassment?" "Every little bit helps," he responded. Gianna turned back to her computer. "Oh, this is interesting. Desiree just went live on Instagram. Want to watch?" We huddled around her screen as Desiree's perfectly made-up face appeared, standing in what used to be my bedroom. "Just a little drama with the old house," she was saying, flipping her hair. "But Quentin assures me it's nothing to worry about. We're already planning the most amazing renovations, though this awful backsplash has to go immediately." I felt my jaw tighten. I'd designed that backsplash myself, incorporating elements from my grandmother's old home. "Save that video," I told Gianna. "Evidence of attempted property alterations without owner consent." "Already downloading," she grinned. "Want to see something else interesting? Check out the comments." The live stream was filling with questions. Whose house was it before? Didn't Quentin just get divorced? Wait, wasn't he married like last week? Desiree's perfect smile faltered slightly as she tried to keep up with the comments. "Oh, that's all just boring legal stuff. We're focusing on the future, right, babe?" Quentin appeared in the frame, looking significantly less polished than usual. "Desiree, maybe we should wait on the renovation plans." "But you promised." Her voice took on a whiny edge. "You said once the old furniture was gone." "Stream ended," Gianna announced as the screen went black. "Trouble in paradise already." My phone lit up with another message from Lincoln. "They're trying to file an emergency injunction. Want to tell them about the back taxes they owe on the property they've been occupying without a lease." I smiled, remembering all those documents I'd carefully filed away. "Give them the full bill, every penny." "Including interest and penalties?" "Especially those." I stood up, gathering my things. Time to show them exactly what they're dealing with. "Where are you going?" Gianna asked. "To watch my house. I have a feeling they're about to do something stupid." And I wanted front row seats when they did. Gianna's article dropped at exactly 9 a.m., The Dark Side of Success, When Ambition Destroys Marriages. No names mentioned, but anyone who knew us would recognize the story. I read it from my hotel room while watching the security camera feed from my house. My phone rang almost immediately. "Have you seen this?" Stella's voice was shrill. "This is slander." "Hard to be slander when it's all true," I replied calmly, "and there are no names mentioned." "Everyone knows it's about Quentin. His office is getting calls." I watched the security feed as a moving truck pulled up to my house. Speaking of Quentin, why are there movers at my property without my authorization? Silence on the line. "Stella, you might want to tell them to stop. That's breaking and entering now." She hung up. On screen, I watched Sonia rush out to stop the moving truck while frantically dialing her phone, probably calling their lawyer again. My own phone buzzed with a text from Lincoln. "Their lawyer just called. They're claiming adverse possession." I actually laughed out loud. "Tell them to check the property tax records. Every payment made from my personal account." While waiting for the fallout, I scrolled through social media. Desiree had been busy, posting filtered photos of herself redesigning my house. The comments were getting increasingly hostile. Isn't this the house that other woman built? Way to move in on a married man. Gold digger alert. Desiree's response was to post a tearful story about haters and jealous people who don't understand true love. She tagged Quentin, who hadn't responded. Around noon, a massive bouquet arrived at my hotel room, no card. I called the florist. "Oh yes," the clerk said cheerfully. "Mr. Quentin ordered those, said to tell you he's ready to negotiate." I sent the flowers back with a note. Negotiations closed. Eviction proceeds as planned. Then I ordered 3 identical bouquets sent to their lawyer's office, each with cards reading, "Thank you for your continued cooperation in the eviction proceedings." Gianna called mid-afternoon. "You're trending locally. Quentin's company's getting hammered on social media. Someone leaked that he's dating an influencer half his age while evicting his wife." "I didn't leak that," I pointed out. "No, but Desiree's posts did. She's not exactly subtle." Gianna paused. "Oh, and your mother-in-law just tried to have me fired." "Tried?" "My editor laughed her out of the building. Apparently, she's been calling everyone who might have influence, trying to suppress the story. It's only making more people interested." I checked my security feed again. Sonia was pacing in my driveway, gesturing wildly while on the phone. Trevor had shown up and was arguing with Quentin on the front lawn. "They're turning on each other," I observed. "That's what happens when you build relationships on status instead of loyalty," Gianna said. "Speaking of status, Quentin's company just released a statement." She sent me the link. "We are aware of the personal matters involving our executive team and are handling them internally. We remind the public that private legal disputes should remain private." My phone buzzed with another text from Lincoln. "They're offering double the property value." "Not for sale," I replied. "Triple? The house isn't for sale at any price, but they're welcome to rent it at market value plus damages." I watched through the security camera as Lincoln's latest message was delivered. Quentin opened it right there on my front lawn. His face went pale. "What did you send him?" I asked Lincoln. "The bill for 3 years of unpaid rent, plus penalties for unauthorized occupancy and attempted property modifications. Just over $2 million. On screen, Trevor grabbed the paper from Quentin's hands. His mouth fell open. "How long do they have to pay?" I asked. 48 hours, or we proceed with formal eviction and property seizure." Sonia was reading the paper now, her face turning an alarming shade of red. She started jabbing her finger at Quentin's chest. I turned up the volume on the security feed just in time to hear her scream. "You signed this without reading it! What kind of idiot are you?" "Mother, please," Quentin tried to calm her. "We can figure this out." "Figure it out! She owns everything. The land, the house, even the improvements we made. How do you figure out $2 million in 2 days? Trevor threw up his hands. "I told you this was a bad idea, but no, you had to push him to upgrade to someone more suitable. Well, look where that got us." My phone lit up with a text from Quentin. "Can we talk? Please? Just us." I watched him on screen, standing in my driveway looking lost while his family imploded around him. "No," I texted back, "but you can start packing." The private dining room at Leblanc was quiet enough to hear a pin drop. Quentin sat across from me, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His usually perfect suit was slightly wrinkled, and his designer watch was missing, probably pawned in a desperate attempt to raise funds. "You look terrible," I observed, sipping my water. $2 million, Alina? That's insane." "Market rate for the property, plus penalties, plus interest." I pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. "All itemised, all legal." He flipped through the pages, his face growing paler. "The structural modifications." "You mean the ones Desiree announced on Instagram before getting proper permits?" "Yes, those added quite a bit to the total." She didn't know. That it wasn't your house to renovate. Clearly. The waiter appeared. "I ordered the most expensive item on the menu." Quentin just asked for coffee. Mother's furious, he said after the waiter left. She's talking about suing you for emotional distress. I actually laughed. Please encourage her. I'd love to countersue for harassment. Stella and Trevor aren't speaking to either of us. They're saying we ruined the family's reputation. Funny how quickly family loyalty crumbles when money's involved. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it and winced. Desiree's not happy either. She thought that she was getting a ready-made luxury lifestyle. I finished for him. Instead, she got a man who can't even afford his coffee right now. I can still pay for coffee, he snapped, then deflated. But the company, they're putting me on administrative leave. Something about public relations concerns. Karma's interesting that way. He leaned forward, desperate now. Look, I know I handled this badly. Badly? I cut him off. You let your mother orchestrate throwing me out of my own house so you could move in your Instagram model girlfriend. Badly doesn't begin to cover it. I'll make it right. Just tell me what you want. Name your price. My lunch arrived. Wagyu beef that cost more than Quentin probably had in his account right now. I cut into it slowly, savouring the moment. What I want, I said carefully, is for you to understand exactly what you threw away. Not just me, but everything I built while you were too busy climbing the corporate ladder to notice. The house is just a symbol. Every detail in that house, every fixture, every design choice, I made it while you were ignoring me. I built our life while you planned to replace me. His phone buzzed again. This time I caught Desiree's name on the screen before he turned it face down. She's moving out, he admitted. Says she can't handle the drama. No trust fund baby wants a boyfriend who can't afford her lifestyle, I agreed, especially one who's about to be evicted. About that, he pulled out a wrinkled document. Mother found an investor. We can pay the $2 million, but we need more time. I held up my hand. The deadline stands, 48 hours, or we proceed with eviction. Be reasonable. I'm being reasonable. I could have had you arrested for attempting unauthorized renovations. Instead, I'm giving you time to leave gracefully. His face hardened. You planned this, all of it. The land trust, the contracts, everything. Oh, Quentin, I just protected myself while you were busy protecting your ego. I dabbed my lips with the napkin. Your mother taught me that, actually. All those years of watching her manipulate everyone around her, I learned a lot. So this is revenge? This is consequences. You chose status over loyalty. Now you get to experience life without either. His phone buzzed a third time. He checked it and went pale. Problem? Desiree, she just posted about finding evidence of your premeditated financial trap in the house. She's threatening to expose you. I smiled and pulled out my own phone, showing him the cease and desist letter Lincoln had already prepared. You mean the evidence she obtained by breaking and entering? The evidence she just admitted to stealing on social media? Quentin put his head in his hands. When did you become so calculated, strategic, or just unwilling to be discarded? I stood up, dropping my napkin on the table. Check's on you. Consider it the first installment of what you owe me. Alina, please. 48 hours, Quentin. And tell Desiree that if she posts one more thing about me or my house, she'll be hearing from my lawyers next. I walked out, leaving him with the bill he couldn't afford and the realization that he'd underestimated me for the last time. The moving trucks arrived exactly 48 hours later. I sat in my parked car across the street, watching the chaos unfold through my windshield. Sonia was directing the movers like a general commanding troops, while Stella supervised the packing of what she claimed were family heirlooms. My phone buzzed with a text from Lincoln. Want me to verify they're not taking anything that belongs to the house? Already handled, I replied, watching my hired inventory specialist photograph every item being removed. Where's Quentin? Still trying to get an emergency court hearing. Judge denied it 10 minutes ago. A sleek red convertible screeched to a halt in front of the house. Desiree jumped out, designer sunglasses barely hiding her tear-streaked makeup. "You can't just leave," she screamed at the house. "We had plans. What about my influencer house tour series?" Quentin emerged from the garage carrying a box of his belongings. "Not now, Desiree." "Not now? I turned down a sponsored trip to Bali for this. My followers were counting on seeing the renovation." I rolled down my window slightly to hear better. "There is no renovation," Quentin snapped. "There's no house, there's no money, it's over." "Over?" Desiree's voice hit a pitch that probably disturbed local dogs. "What do you mean over?" "He means," Sonia cut in, "that thanks to his ex-wife's manipulative scheme, we're all being evicted, and he's being suspended from work. Happy now, Desiree? Is this enough drama for your precious followers?" Desiree ripped off her sunglasses. "Suspended? But what about the country club membership you promised? The summer house in the Hamptons?" I couldn't help but laugh. The sound carried just far enough to make them all turn toward my car. Desiree spotted me first. "You!" She started marching across the street. I stepped out of my car, Lincoln's cease and desist letter ready in my hand. "Careful. You're already facing potential charges for the items you removed from my house without permission." She stopped short. "Your house? This was supposed to be my house, my big break." "Desiree," Quentin called weakly, "please don't make this worse." "Ooh, worse?" She whirled on him. "You told me you were divorced. You said this was our fresh start." "Actually," I interjected, "we're not divorced yet. He never filed the papers." I smiled at Quentin. Funny oversight for someone so eager to upgrade, don't you think? Sonia dropped the vase she was carrying. It shattered on the driveway, the same driveway where she'd told me I wasn't good enough for her son. "You mean," she sputtered, "this whole time?" "Legally, I'm still your daughter-in-law," I confirmed. "Not that it matters now." Desiree let out a sound between a scream and a sob. "I can't believe this. I've been living with a married man. Do you know what this will do to my brand?" She stormed back to her car, phone already in hand, presumably to damage control her social media. The convertible peeled away, leaving black marks on the street. "Well," Trevor emerged from the house carrying his own box, "that's the last of my stuff. Good luck with whatever this is." "Where are you going?" Sonia demanded. "Away from this mess. I've got a job interview in Seattle next week." He looked at me. "Nice play, Alina. Guess we should have read those contracts after all." Stella appeared next, her perfect makeup finally showing cracks. "Mother, the movers need your credit card for the additional hours." "What? But Quentin was supposed to—" "I can't," Quentin interrupted. "All my accounts are frozen pending the company investigation." I checked my watch. "You have 30 minutes before I call the police to remove any remaining trespassers." "You were always smarter than me, weren't you?" Quentin said quietly. "No," I replied. "I was just never as selfish as you." One by one, they loaded into their separate cars. Sonia was still muttering about lawyers. Stella was on the phone with her husband, probably begging for money. Trevor had already disappeared. Finally, only Quentin remained, standing in the driveway looking lost. "The divorce papers will be delivered tomorrow," I told him. "Don't worry, I'm not asking for alimony. The house is enough." "I really loved you once," he said. "No, you loved what I could do for you. There's a difference." He nodded slowly, picked up his last box and walked to his car. In the end, that's all it took. One box to pack away 12 years of marriage. I waited until they were all gone before walking up to my front door. The key slid into the lock smoothly, like coming home after a long trip. Inside, the house was a mess of moving debris and abandoned packing materials. But it was mine, all mine. Time to redecorate.
The master bathroom needs to be completely gutted, I told the contractor, stepping over the remains of Desiree's attempted renovation. And that awful gold paint she started needs to go. Mike, the same contractor who'd built the house, whistled at the damage. They really tried to work without permits, huh? They really did. I handed him a folder of designs. Think we can fix it in 3 weeks? For you? Absolutely. Though I got to ask, what's the rush? I smiled. It's going on the rental market. High-end, short-term luxury stays. My phone buzzed, Gianna calling. Turn on Channel 8 News right now. I pulled up the stream on my phone, Mike peering over my shoulder. The headline scrolled across the bottom. Local executive faces investigation over property dispute. The reporter stood outside Quentin's company headquarters. Sources say the suspension comes after allegations of unauthorized use of company resources to facilitate personal real estate transactions. This follows viral social media posts by his girlfriend, influencer Desiree Stevens, alleging fraudulent property claims. Oh dear, I said, not feeling sorry at all. Seems Desiree's revenge posts backfired. That's not all, Gianna sounded gleeful. Guess who's suing each other? Who? Trevor filed a lawsuit against Stella, claiming she stole family heirlooms during the move. Stella countersued, saying Trevor took their grandmother's jewellery. And they're both suing Sonia for apparently promising each of them the same vacation property in Florida. Mike shook his head. Rich folks sure know how to implode. The best part, Gianna continued, Sonia doesn't even own that Florida property. It belongs to their aunt, who's now suing all of them for harassment. My phone beeped with another call. Lincoln? Hold on, I told Gianna, switching lines. What's up? You'll never guess who just tried to claim ownership of your house through a shell company. Sonia. Close. Quentin. Apparently, he took out loans using company collateral, claiming he owned the property. That's what triggered the investigation. I sat down on the stairs, laughing. He really never learned to read contracts, did he? No. Oh, and remember that investor they found? Turns out it was Trevor, promising money he didn't have. The bank's now investigating all of them for attempted fraud. Mike was still examining the bathroom disaster. Want to hear something funny? That gold paint they used? It's not even real gold leaf. It's cheap spray paint that's probably toxic. Perfect metaphor, I mused. All flash, no substance. My phone buzzed again. An email from a women's investment group. They wanted me to speak at their next conference about property rights and financial independence. Lincoln, I said, remember how my grandmother always said, knowledge is power? Hard to forget. She made me promise to teach you everything I knew about property law. Think it's time to pass that knowledge on? Speaking circuit could be interesting, especially with how viral your story's gone. I looked around what used to be my marital home, seeing it with new eyes. Schedule the speaking engagement, but first, let's make this place truly mine. Over the next few weeks, I watched my house transform. The gaudy additions were stripped away, replaced with clean lines and quality materials. Every change felt like erasing another memory of betrayal. Gianna kept me updated on the fallout. Desiree's influencer career imploded after her followers discovered she'd been living in a married man's house. Quentin's company fired him after the loan scandal broke. Sonia had to sell her own house to cover legal fees from all the lawsuits. Karma's really going all out, Gianna said over coffee one morning. Did you hear about Stella? What now? Her husband's divorcing her. Apparently, all this drama made him realise she's just like her mother. I stirred my coffee thoughtfully. You know what the crazy part is? None of this would have happened if they'd just treated me with basic respect. Speaking of respect, she slid a magazine across the table. Your story's inspired quite a movement. Women are checking their property rights, updating contracts. The article's headline read, "The house she built, How one woman's story sparked a financial independence revolution. My phone lit up with a text from Lincoln. Final paperwork filed. The house is now officially registered to your new company. Want to hear the best part? What's that? Your first booking? It's for a women's empowerment retreat. They specifically chose your house because of its story. I looked at the magazine, then at my phone, thinking of my grandmother's wooden box of documents that started it all. Book them, I replied, and send them a welcome basket, something that says, build your own foundation. After all, every woman should know how to protect what's hers. The autumn breeze carried the sound of laughter through my open windows as I finished arranging fresh flowers in the foyer. My first retreat group would arrive in an hour, and everything had to be perfect. My phone buzzed, a text from Gianna. Turn on the local news now. I clicked on the TV just in time to see Sonia being escorted from her country club, her membership card cut in half. The caption read, local socialite banned after payment dispute. Guess she couldn't afford the dues anymore, I murmured, straightening a throw pillow. The doorbell rang. Lincoln stood there, holding a thick envelope and grinning. Special delivery. More legal documents? I stepped aside to let him in. Better, remember that shell company Quentin tried to use to claim ownership of the house? He pulled out several papers. It just got seized by the bank, and guess who they're selling the assets to? I raised an eyebrow. You, at pennies on the dollar. Apparently your story impressed some people in their executive board. Karma really does have a sense of humour, I said, just as my phone rang, unknown number. Alina? Stella's voice was barely recognisable. I need your help. I put the phone on speaker. That's unexpected. My husband, he's doing to me what we did to you. His mother wants me out, says I'm not good enough anymore. She choked back a sob. You were right, about everything. And? Would you teach me how to protect myself? I shared a look with Lincoln. Come to my first retreat. Learn with everyone else. I can't afford. Consider it Karma's payment plan, I interrupted. But Stella, this time, pay attention to the fine print. After she hung up, Lincoln handed me one last document. Speaking of Karma, Desiree's being sued by her sponsors for breach of contract. Apparently, living with a married man violated their morality clauses. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Mike the contractor carrying a small package. Found this behind the wall when we were fixing the bathroom, he said. Thought you should have it. Inside was my grandmother's old journal, which I'd thought lost during the move-in years ago. A bookmark stuck out from the middle, a handwritten note in her elegant script. Dear Alina, if you're reading this, you've finally taken back what's yours. I always knew you would. Power isn't about control, it's about preparation. Love, Grandma. Lincoln picked up his briefcase. Ready for your first group? Almost. I walked to the kitchen where a row of gift baskets waited. Each contained a leather-bound notebook, a copy of Property Law Basics, and a small wooden box, just like my grandmother's. Teaching them your secrets? He asked. Teaching them their power, I corrected. A final text buzzed through. Quentin, I heard you're helping Stella. After everything we did, I typed back. It's not about revenge anymore. It's about breaking the cycle. Then I blocked his number. Cars started pulling up outside, women arriving for the retreat. Through the window, I watched them step out, looking up at my house with hope and determination in their eyes. Miss your grandmother? Lincoln asked softly. Every day? I picked up her journal. But I think she'd be proud, not of the revenge, but of what you built from it, he finished. The doorbell chimed one last time. This time it was Gianna carrying a stack of folders. Registration forms? I asked. Better? Letters? From women who read your story? They're asking for more retreats, more workshops. She spread them across the kitchen island. You started something bigger than revenge, Alina. You started a revolution. I picked up one letter, reading the desperate words of another woman facing what I'd faced. Then another, and another. You know what the best revenge is? I said, gathering the welcome baskets. Teaching others how to avoid needing it in the first place. The front door opened as the first guests entered, their voices filling my house with new energy, new purpose. Stella slipped in last, looking smaller without her designer clothes and attitude. I handed her a basket. Welcome to your foundation. She looked confused. I thought this was about property law. It is. I opened my grandmother's journal to the first page. But first, we build ourselves, then we build our houses, then we build our futures. The room filled with women ready to learn, to grow, to protect themselves. My house, once a symbol of betrayal, transformed into a beacon of empowerment. I touched the journal's worn cover one last time before addressing the group. Ladies, welcome to the house she built. Let's begin.
The phone's shrill ring pierced the darkness at 3:17 a.m. As a trauma surgeon, late-night calls weren't unusual, but this one made my stomach clench, my mother's number flashing on the screen. "Samara, you have to come home now." Mum's voice cracked between sobs. "Aaliyah, there's been a terrible accident. She's in critical condition. The doctor's here. They're saying they can't help her." I sat up, already reaching for my laptop. What happened? Which hospital? "Memorial General! Please, she needs you. They say she needs specialised surgery, and you're the only one who can arrange it. She might not make it through the night." My hands were already typing emails, making calls. I'm Dr. Samara Warner, and in moments like these, my reputation as one of the country's top trauma surgeons became both a blessing and a curse. Within 30 minutes, I had secured emergency privileges at Memorial, arranged for a specialist to be on standby, and booked the first flight home. "I'm on my way," I said, throwing clothes into a bag. "Keep me updated on any changes." The flight was a blur of anxiety and old memories. I hadn't been home in 3 years, not since the last emergency that turned out to be manufactured drama. But this was different. This was Aaliyah. When the taxi pulled up to Memorial's emergency entrance, something felt off. The lot was nearly empty. No ambulances, no urgency. The emergency desk clerk looked confused when I mentioned my sister's name. "Aaliyah Gray? We haven't had any major traumas tonight." My phone buzzed. A text from Mum. "We're at the house. Come quickly." The growing knot in my stomach tightened as the taxi turned onto our old street. Christmas lights twinkled in April. Balloons bobbed against the porch railing. Cars lined the driveway. I stepped out, medical bag in hand, the sound of laughter and music spilling from inside. The door flew open before I could knock. "Surprise!" My sister Aaliyah stood there, champagne glass in hand, wearing a sparkly dress. "Oh my God! You actually brought your doctor bag. That's hilarious." The world tilted sideways as reality set in. Behind her, a banner read, "Happy 58th birthday, Mary." "Samara, sweetie!" Mum emerged from the crowd, arms wide. "You made it! I knew you would. You told me Aaliyah was dying." My voice came out flat, clinical. "Oh, don't be so dramatic." Aaliyah rolled her eyes. "Mum just knew you wouldn't come otherwise. And look, you're here. Finally." The party guests, faces I barely recognised, watched with awkward interest. Dad stood in the corner studying his shoes. Aunt Joanna sipped her wine, avoiding eye contact. Come in. Mum pulled me inside. "Everyone's been asking about you. Did you know Aaliyah's husband Miles just made partner? And wait until you hear about the amazing investment opportunity we found." I smiled tightly, my fingers clenching around my bag's handle. The same bag I'd packed with emergency supplies, thinking my sister was bleeding out somewhere. The same sister now dragging me toward a cake, laughing about how I'd totally fallen for it. "You must be exhausted from your flight," Mum said, steering me toward the kitchen. "But now that we have you here, sweetie, there's one more surprise." I caught my reflection in the window, still wearing my hospital badge, hair messy from the rush. A trauma surgeon who could handle the bloodiest emergencies, but somehow never saw her own family's cuts coming. My phone buzzed again. The specialist I called in was asking for an update on the critical patient. The hospital administrator wanted to know why I'd activated emergency protocols. The chief of surgery needed to discuss my sudden leave of absence. Actually, Mom, I said, my voice steady as a scalpel, I think I'm the one with a surprise. She beamed, misreading my tone completely. That's wonderful. Everyone, Samara has an announcement. The room turned to face me, expectant faces glowing in the party lights. They had no idea what they'd just set in motion. No idea that this time, the emergency was real, just not the one they had invented. I felt something shift inside me, like a bone finally breaking clean after years of hairline fractures. My smile remained fixed, professional, as I reached for a glass of champagne. This would be my last performance as the dutiful daughter they could summon at will. They wanted me here so badly. Fine. They'd get exactly what they deserved. To family, I raised my glass, watching Mom's eyes shine with victory. And to surprises. It's such a wonderful investment opportunity, Mom gushed over breakfast the next morning. Beachfront property, private access, and the price is just incredible. I stirred my coffee, watching the cream create perfect spirals. After last night's party died down, they'd insisted I stay in my old room. The posters were still on the walls, frozen in time like a museum of teenage dreams. We just need a small favour, Dad finally spoke up, sliding a folder across the table. The bank wants additional security on the loan, with your income. I opened the folder. Inside was a loan application for $400,000, already filled out with my information. They'd even forged my signature on several documents. You forged my signature? I kept my voice neutral, clinical. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Aaliyah waltzed in, still in her pyjamas at noon. It's not like you wouldn't have signed it anyway. You're always so uptight about everything. Like last night's fake emergency, I asked. God, are you still hung up on that? Aaliyah rolled her eyes. It worked, didn't it? You're here. And honestly, the way you showed up with your little doctor bag was priceless. Right, Mom? Mom reached across the table, patting my hand. Sweetie, we just miss you. You're always so busy with your important surgeon life, never having time for family. Sometimes we need to get creative. Creative, I repeated. Like the time you told me Dad was having a heart attack. That was different, Mum waved dismissively. We really did think it might be his heart. It turned out to be indigestion, but better safe than sorry. Or when Aaliyah supposedly had appendicitis during my board certification exam. I did have terrible cramps, Aaliyah protested. How was I supposed to know it was just period pain? The memories surfaced like air bubbles in blood. Missed opportunities, sabotaged interviews, manufactured crises, always timed perfectly to derail my plans. Each time I'd come running, each time they'd laugh it off as family looking out for family. The condo closes tomorrow, Dad said quietly. We need an answer today. I stood up, walking to the window. Outside, Miles was pulling up in his new Mercedes. Another investment opportunity success story, no doubt. Show me the property details, I said. Mum practically bounced to get another folder. It's absolutely perfect. There's even room for all of us to stay when we visit you in the city. When you visit me? Well, of course. We'll need somewhere to stay when we come up for shopping trips and social events. You have that spare room you never use? I flipped through the glossy brochure, noting the developer's name, Grey Properties, Miles's company, everything connected like veins leading to a hemorrhage. I'll think about it, I said. Think about it. Mum's voice sharpened. Sweetie, we need an answer now. The opportunity closes today. After everything we've done for you. Everything you've done for me, I echoed. Yes. Who supported you through medical school? Who was there when you needed us? I paid my own way through medical school, with loans, which I'm still paying off. But we gave you a home to come back to. Unlike you, Aaliyah understands family loyalty. She's warm, she's present, she's broke, I finished. And now you need my money. The kitchen fell silent. Dad studied his coffee. Aaliyah's face flushed red. You know what your problem is, Samara? Aaliyah spat. You think you're better than us just because you cut people open for a living. You've always been like this, cold, calculating, keeping score. I'm not keeping score, I said quietly. I'm just done playing the game. Mum's face crumpled into familiar tears. How can you be so cruel after I raised you, loved you? I'll think about it, I repeated, gathering my things. I have some calls to make. Work calls, Aaliyah sneered. Running away again? I paused at the door, remembering something. Actually, I need to call the hospital administrator. Clear up that emergency protocol I activated last night. Interesting thing about false medical emergencies, they're technically fraud when they involve hospital resources. The colour drained from Mum's face. Samara, you wouldn't... Like you said, Mum. Sometimes we need to get creative. I walked out, already pulling up my phone contacts. First call, my old friend Lena, now a local attorney. Second, the county records office. Third, the state medical board's fraud division. They wanted to play games? Fine. But this time, I was changing the rules. Behind me, I heard Mum's voice. She'll come around. She always does. I smiled. They had no idea what was coming. Holy shit, Samara. Lena spread the documents across her desk. This is way bigger than family drama. These property deals, the zoning changes, there's serious fraud here. I sat in her law office, watching the afternoon sun cast shadows across years of carefully orchestrated deception. Keep going. Your brother-in-law's company has been buying up properties just before mysterious zoning changes make them worth 10 times more. And look at this signature. She held up a document. Your father's name is on half these deals. Dad's always been their rubber stamp. This isn't just rubber stamping. This is criminal liability. Lena leaned back. Does he even know? My phone buzzed. Another text from Mum about the condo deadline. I ignored it. What about the trust documents? I asked. Lena pulled out another file. Your grandmother's trust is ironclad. They needed your signature to access it, which you gave them 5 years ago. Under duress, I interrupted. After they claimed Aaliyah needed emergency surgery. Jesus. Lena shook her head. You know, I always wondered why you left town so fast after residency. I had my reasons. My phone buzzed again. Aunt Joanna this time. Your mother's heartbroken. Please call her. Speaking of reasons, Lena said, I found something interesting. She played an audio file on her computer. Mum's voice filled the room, and Samara's too obsessively honourable to ever retaliate. That's why she's perfect. All ethics and no backbone, just like her father. When was this? I asked. Last week, from the country club's security system. Your Aunt Joanna was there too. I remembered Joanna's voice from 15 years ago. If you tell anyone about Aaliyah's situation, it'll destroy this family's reputation. Is that what you want? I need you to draw up some papers, I said. Revocation of power of attorney, trust access, everything. Already done. Lena slid a stack of documents forward. But Samara, are you sure about this? Once you start, there's no going back. My phone buzzed a third time. A photo from Aaliyah. Her and Mum crying together, captioned, Family is forever, when they're not being selfish. They've never worried about going back, I said, reaching for a pen. Why should I? An hour later, I walked into the local diner where my parents were regulars. The waitress recognised me immediately. Dr. Samara, your mum was just here bragging about your visit. She mentioned a beautiful beach condo. Really? I smiled. Did she mention where she got the money for it? Back at the house, I played the perfect daughter. Listened to Mum's hints about the loan deadline. Nodded at Aaliyah's pointed comments about family loyalty. Watched Dad shuffle papers in his study, oblivious to the noose tightening around his neck. I found some old photos, Mum said over dinner. Remember this one? Your high school graduation. You almost missed it because you insisted on doing that hospital volunteer program. The program that got me into medical school, I noted. You were always so focused on leaving, Aaliyah said, while I stayed and built something real here with Miles. How is the real estate business? I asked innocently. I heard the zoning board's been very cooperative. Miles coughed. Dad looked up sharply. Just amazing, Aaliyah beamed. Miles is so good at seeing opportunities. Unlike some people who waste their lives in hospitals. My phone lit up with a message from Lena. Documents filed. Trust access revoked. You're clear. You know what I remember about graduation? I said, standing up. How Aunt Joanna convinced me to cover for you that week, Aaliyah. What was it she said? Family protects their own. The colour drained from Aaliyah's face. Joanna, who'd joined us for dinner, set down her fork. Samara, Mum warned, some things are better left in the past. You're right, I smiled. The past is done. Just like my access to grandmother's trust, I revoked it this afternoon. The silence was surgical, perfect, clean. You... what? Mum whispered. I also filed a formal complaint about those zoning irregularities. Anonymous, of course. Family protects their own, right? You can't do this, Aaliyah started. Actually, I can. And I did. Consider it my contribution to family loyalty. I walked out, leaving them with their cold dinner and colder realizations. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from an unknown number. This is Detective Roberts. We need to discuss some documents that came across our desk. The game was changing, and I was just getting started. I'm calling to verify the trust revocation, the bank manager said over the phone. You understand this terminates all existing credit lines and automated payments linked to the account? Yes. I watched the sunrise from my hotel room, having moved out of the house last night. And I want a complete audit of all transactions from the past 5 years. Of course, Dr. Samara. And regarding the mortgage payments for the property on Oak Street, stop those immediately. A knock at my door interrupted the call. Aunt Joanna stood there, perfectly coiffed despite the early hour. We need to talk, she said, pushing past me into the room. I ended the call. About what? Old times? Like when you helped them hide Aaliyah's abortion while I took the blame for missing that scholarship interview. You were stronger. You could handle it. Joanna paced the room. Aaliyah was fragile. Fragile enough to destroy my reputation at church. To let Mom tell everyone I was acting out when really I was covering for her precious baby. That was 15 years ago. And nothing's changed. I pulled out my laptop, turning it to show her the screen. Except now I have proof of everything. She stared at the documents displayed. Bank statements, text messages, recorded calls. Years of manipulation catalogued with surgical precision. What do you want? She asked quietly. I want you to deliver a message. Tell them to stop calling. Stop showing up. Stop pretending we're one big happy family. They're your family. No. They're parasites who found a reliable host. My phone chimed. An email from a local reporter responding to my tip about zoning irregularities. Another piece falling into place. You'll regret this, Joanna said. When you're alone in that big city with your fancy career, you'll miss having people who love you. Love me? I laughed. Let's talk about love. Remember when Mom convinced the medical school board I was unstable because I wouldn't defer my admission to help with Aaliyah's wedding? She was trying to keep you close. She was trying to keep me controlled. But that's over now. Joanna's face hardened. You think you're so clever with your evidence and your plans, but you're still that scared little girl who needed family approval. You're right. I was scared. Not anymore. After she left, I met with the reporter at a coffee shop across town. She took notes as I laid out the story, my identity hidden under the pseudonym Ruth Kessler. This is explosive stuff, she said. The zoning fraud alone. My phone buzzed. A voicemail from Aaliyah. Sam, I need you for real this time, please. Something in her voice made me pause. Not the usual dramatic flair. Real fear. I played it again, analysing each tremor and break like reading vital signs. This wasn't another manipulation. Something was wrong. The reporter was still talking about deadlines and sources. I held up a hand. Give me 24 hours before you run anything, I said. There might be more to the story. Back in my hotel room, I called Lena. Can you check police reports from last night? Anything involving Aaliyah or Miles? She was quiet for a moment. There's an incident report. Aaliyah was picked up for reckless driving. Blood alcohol level was significant. Let me guess, no booking record? Someone called it in as a medical emergency. She's at Memorial now. Of course. Their favourite play. Turn crimes into medical issues. Make everything disappear with the right connections. Another call came in. Mom. Sweetie, about what happened. We can discuss it later. Right now, we need your help. Aaliyah's in trouble. Real trouble or manufactured trouble? Please, her voice cracked. The hospital is asking questions about her blood work. If you could just talk to them. I ended the call, staring at the growing web of evidence on my laptop. One signature from me could make this disappear. Keep it out of the papers. Protect the family name one more time. My finger hovered over the reporter's number. Delete the story? Help them cover it up again? Then I remembered Joanna's words. You were stronger. You could handle it. I dialed a different number, the district attorney's office. This is Dr. Samara Warner. I need to report an attempted medical fraud at Memorial Hospital. Sometimes the kindest cut is the one that finally lets the infection drain. My phone lit up with another message from Aaliyah. If you don't help me, I'll lose everything. No, I whispered to the empty room. You'll just lose your safety net. Welcome to reality, sister. The police station's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows across Aaliyah's mascara-streaked face. She sat in the interview room, her designer dress wrinkled, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Thank God you're here! She jumped up. Tell them about my medical condition, the one that affects my blood alcohol readings. Detective Roberts raised an eyebrow. The condition that mysteriously appears whenever she's caught driving under the influence. There's no condition, I said. And I'm not here to help cover this up. Aaliyah's face crumpled. But you're my sister. Exactly. Which is why I'm letting this happen. Mum burst through the door, Dad trailing behind her. Samara, what are you doing? Fix this. Like you fixed the last 3 DUIs? I turned to Detective Roberts. You'll find those incidents were mysteriously reclassified as medical emergencies. I've brought the documentation. You bitch! Aaliyah lunged forward, but the detective held her back. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Playing God with people's lives just like at your precious hospital. No, I'm just done playing pretend. I placed a USB drive on the table. This contains evidence of systematic fraud involving hospital resources to cover up criminal behaviour. I'm formally reporting it as both a physician and a witness. Mum grabbed my arm. Think about what you're doing. This will ruin her career, her marriage. Her career? I laughed. Her Instagram influencer posts about luxury lifestyle? Or maybe you mean Miles's career building illegal real estate schemes? You don't understand, Dad finally spoke. Miles has powerful friends. If this gets out... It's already out. I showed them my phone. The local news website's breaking story about zoning fraud investigations. The DA's office is very interested in how certain properties got rezoned right after your company acquired them. Aaliyah collapsed into a chair. You're ice. You know that. Pure ice. You enjoy watching people hurt. No, I stepped closer. That's the difference between you and me. I just stopped helping people who set the fire. Detective Roberts cleared his throat. Ms. Aaliyah, we're ready to process your booking. Booking? Mum's voice rose. No, we can work something out. Samara, please, use your hospital connections. Those connections? I pulled out my medical badge. They're investigating every case where I was asked to intervene. Every emergency you manufactured. Every time you used my credentials to bypass the system. You'll regret this, Aaliyah hissed as the officer led her toward booking. When you're alone in your perfect little life, you'll realise what you threw away. I watched them fingerprint her, thinking of all the times I'd cleaned up her messes, covered her lies, enabled her chaos. Your sister's right, Mom said quietly. You'll have no one. I already had no one. I just had parasites wearing family masks. Dad touched my shoulder. Samara, please. We can fix this as a family. Family? I shrugged off his hand. Where was family when I needed surgery after that car accident and you used my insurance money for Aaliyah's wedding? Where was family when you sabotaged my residency matches to keep me at the local hospital? We were protecting you. No, you were protecting your investment. I turned to leave, but Mum's voice stopped me. If you walk away now, don't ever come back. Don't worry, I said, without turning around. I won't. Outside, I found Miles waiting by his Mercedes. You think you're so smart. He stepped into my path. But you have no idea what you've started. I know people who can hurt your reputation, just like you're hurting ours. Funny thing about reputations, I smiled. They're a lot like surgical procedures. One wrong move and everything falls apart. Is that a threat? No, that's a diagnosis. And your condition, it's terminal. My phone buzzed, Lena warning me about potential retaliation. But I wasn't worried. Every cut I'd made was precise, documented, and completely legal. They wanted to play with reputations? Fine. Let them learn what happens when you push a surgeon too far. I got into my car, watching Miles storm into the police station in my rearview mirror. He still thought he could fix this with money and connections. He didn't understand that some wounds are meant to bleed. My phone lit up again. A message from an unknown number. "You've made some dangerous enemies. Watch your back." I smiled, starting the engine. They still didn't get it. I wasn't watching my back anymore. I was watching them fall. "Federal agents raided Grey Properties this morning," Lena announced, dropping a newspaper on my hotel room desk. "Your brother-in-law's not looking so smug anymore." I scanned the headline. "Local real estate empire under investigation. Allegations of pyramid scheme and fraud." "The evidence package you provided was thorough," she continued. "The feds are particularly interested in those backdated zoning documents with your dad's signature." My phone buzzed. Another blocked number. I'd been getting threats all week, each one more desperate than the last. "How's Aaliyah handling it?" "Still in custody. Turns out this wasn't her first DUI, just the first one that stuck. The DA's office is reviewing all those mysterious medical emergency classifications." A knock at the door interrupted us. Room service, but I hadn't ordered anything. "Delivery for Dr. Samara." The attendant held out an envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper, an old credit card statement showing massive charges from 15 years ago, medical charges. My medical charges from the car accident they'd used to fund Aaliyah's wedding. "They're getting desperate," Lena observed. "Good." I pulled out my laptop. "Time for phase 2. Within hours, every bank connected to my family's finances received formal fraud alerts. Credit cards maxed out. Accounts frozen. The beach condo deal not just withdrawn, but flagged for suspicious activity. My phone rang. "Mum." "What have you done?" she screamed. "My cards are declined everywhere. The bank won't even let me access my accounts." "Funny how that works," I said. "Almost like having your medical emergency turned into someone else's wedding fund. That was different. You were young, you healed fine. I have metal pins in my leg. We paid you back." "No, you didn't. And now neither will anyone else." I hung up and opened my email. The local community Facebook page was blowing up with a viral post about the fake hospital emergency stunt they'd pulled to get me home. The story had been shared thousands of times, with people adding their own experiences of similar family manipulation. "Your mother's trying to spin it," Lena said, scrolling through comments. "Says it was a misunderstanding about a surprise party. Check the hospital security footage I leaked." She whistled. "That's damning. Your mum crying about a critical accident while Aaliyah's in the background laughing about the prank." My phone buzzed again. Aunt Joanna. "I found something in your old room," she said quietly. "Notes you wrote as a child. Plans for running away. Lists of places you could hide." "I was 12, I replied, already planning my escape. "Samara? What do you want? What will it take to end this?" I walked to the window, watching police cars pull up to my parents' house. "It's already ending. The DA just froze all assets connected to the real estate scam. Dad and Mum are named participants. They'll lose everything. Like I lost my trust fund, my insurance money, my peace of mind. A commotion outside caught my attention. Officers were leading Dad out in handcuffs while Mum screamed at them from the porch. Neighbours gathered on their lawns, phones recording everything. "You've destroyed this family," Joanna whispered. "No, I just stopped letting them destroy me. After hanging up, I opened my old medical records, the ones from the car accident, 16 years old, metal pins in my leg, while they used the insurance payout for Aaliyah's dream wedding. 'She needs this,' they'd said. 'You're stronger, you'll understand.' My phone lit up with a news alert. 'Local business owner arrested in federal fraud investigation.' Miles's mugshot stared back at me, his smug smile finally gone. "You did it," Lena said softly. "You actually did it." "Not quite." I pulled up one last email. My resignation letter to the local hospital board, along with evidence of every time they'd helped cover up my family's emergencies. "They're saying you're heartless," Lena warned, "that you enjoyed watching them fall." Maybe I did. I hit send on the email. Maybe that makes me exactly what they always said I was, cold, calculating, distant. Or maybe it makes you free. Outside, more police cars arrived. More neighbours gathered. More phones recorded the fall of the perfect family facade. My phone buzzed one last time, a text from Mum, "Please, we're still your family." I typed back 3 words, "No." We're done. Then I blocked her number, along with every other connection to the life they'd tried to trap me in. Let them call it heartless. Let them call it cold. I called it survival. The community centre buzzed with whispers as I walked in. 3 weeks had passed since everything exploded, and the small town's gossip mill was still churning at full speed. "Did you hear?" a woman stage whispered. "Mary's house is being foreclosed. After all that talk about their beach condo." I kept walking, heading toward the office where Mum volunteered, or used to before everything fell apart. Her desk was already cleared out, her name removed from the volunteer roster. "Dr. Samara?" The director intercepted me. "I assume you're here about your mother's accusations?" "What accusations?" She handed me a letter, Mum's handwriting, claiming I'd forged documents and orchestrated a vendetta against innocent people. "Everything I submitted is authenticated," I said, pulling out my phone. "Would you like to hear the recording of her admitting to the hospital fraud?" "That won't be necessary. Her credibility has been questioned lately." Outside, a crowd gathered around the courthouse steps where Dad was entering for his plea hearing. He'd aged decades in 3 weeks, his shoulders hunched under his suit jacket. "Samara!" Mum's voice cut through the murmur. She pushed through the crowd, designer handbag replaced by a worn purse. "You have to stop this. Your father's taking a plea deal." "Good. He should. They're saying 3 years. Prison, Samara. Your own father. The same father who signed fraudulent documents using my credentials? Who helped steal my insurance money? We were desperate. The market crashed. Aaliyah's wedding plans were already... Save it for your Facebook posts," I cut her off. "The ones claiming I'm mentally unstable, that I'm destroying the family out of jealousy." Her face crumpled. "I'm your mother. Everything I did was to keep this family together." "No. Everything you did was to keep your control." "Please," she grabbed my arm. "Miles is in jail. Aaliyah's marriage is over. She's moving back home, what's left of home. We need you. You need my money, my connections, my silence. I need my daughter. You had your daughter. You just couldn't stop using her." The courthouse doors opened. Dad emerged, looking shell-shocked. The plea deal was done. 3 years, Mum whispered. "And all our assets frozen. Where will we live? How will we survive?" The same way I did, without family support. My phone buzzed. A job offer from a prestigious hospital in London. A fresh start, an ocean away from the wreckage. "Dr. Samara," a reporter pushed forward. "Any comment on your family's involvement in the real estate scandal?" "No comment." I started to walk away. "What about the viral posts about fake medical emergencies? Any response to accusations that you're heartless for exposing your own family?" I stopped. Turned back to face the cameras. Heartless. I spent years healing their self-inflicted wounds, covering their crimes, financing their fantasies, until I realised it's sometimes the most caring thing you can do is let people face consequences. Mum's sob carried across the courthouse steps. "Good. Let them record that too." Lena caught up with me at my hotel. "Aaliyah's divorce is final. She's giving evidence against Miles for a lighter sentence on her DUI charges." "Of course she is," I continued packing. "She always knew how to save herself." "The London offer, you're taking it?" "Already accepted. I fly out next week." "You won like no one else could," Lena said quietly. "Just be careful. Don't let a hollow victory eat you alive." I paused, holding an old photo I'd found in my childhood room. Me at 12, already wearing a too serious expression. Already planning escapes. "It's not hollow," I said. "It's just finished." My phone lit up Aunt Joanna again. "They're broken," she said without preamble. "Was that what you wanted?" "I wanted them to stop breaking me." "And now? What do you want now?" I looked at my packed bags, my one-way ticket, my new life waiting across an ocean. I want peace. At what cost? At exactly the cost they deserved. After she hung up, I walked through the hotel room one last time. Outside, the sun set over the small town that had tried to keep me small. My phone buzzed with messages I'd never read, from people I'd never help again. Let them call it cruel. Let them whisper about the doctor who destroyed her family. Let them wonder why I didn't feel guilty. I felt something better than guilt. I felt free. The London hospital was waiting. A new life was waiting. And for the first time, no one could pull me back with a 3 a.m. call about imaginary emergencies. Some surgeries require removing the whole infection, even if it leaves a scar. The London rain tapped against my office window as I reviewed patient files. A familiar rhythm now, like the steady beep of monitors in surgery. My phone lit up, Lena's weekly update. "Your dad's halfway through his sentence," she texted. "Your mum's working at the mall. Aaliyah's living in their basement, running some MLM scheme on Instagram." I set the phone down without responding. Another text followed. "They still ask about you. Every time I see them." The intercom buzzed. "Dr. Samara, your package from the States arrived." I wasn't expecting anything. The box sat on my desk, return address from my old hometown's post office. Inside lay a scrapbook, worn and familiar. A note fell out. "Found this cleaning the church storage. Thought you should have it. Pastor Mike." The scrapbook opened to baby pictures. Me holding a tiny Alia, Mum looking young and genuine, Dad actually smiling, before the manipulation, before the lies. Between the pages I found something else, a folded piece of paper in my childish handwriting. "One day I will not need their approval to breathe." My office door opened. "Dr. Samara? Emergency in Trauma Bay 3. I closed the scrapbook. "What do we have?" "Car accident. Family of 4. Parents trying to minimise it, but the kids need immediate attention." Something familiar in those words. Parents minimising. Children paying the price. In Trauma Bay 3, I found a scene I knew too well. Parents insisting everything was fine while their children showed clear signs of injury. "It's just a small accident," the mother kept saying. "We don't need all these tests." I looked at the teenage daughter's eyes, the same desperate plea I used to see in my mirror. "Actually," I said, "we do need the tests, and I'm ordering them now. But this isn't a negotiation. Your children's health isn't something you get to gamble with." Hours later, after ensuring the children got proper care despite their parents' protests, I returned to my office. The scrapbook still sat there, a ghost from another life. My phone buzzed, an unknown number. "Samara?" Aaliyah's voice. "Don't hang up, please." I waited. I get it now. Why you did it. All of it." She paused. "I'm in therapy. Real therapy. Not Mom's friend who called everything stress-related." "Why are you calling?" "Because I found my own old journals, full of the same things yours probably were. Escape plans, hidden money, desperate prayers to be somewhere else." I thought of the teenage girl from Trauma Bay 3. "But you stayed." I was weaker. "No," I said. "You were different. That's not the same thing." Silence stretched between us, filled with unspoken histories. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she finally said. "Or money. Or anything, really. I just needed you to know I understand now." After she hung up, I opened my laptop. The hospital's charity foundation page showed a new donation, anonymous funding for youth trauma counselling. My phone lit up again. "Lena." "You okay?" she asked. Aaliyah told me she called. "I'm fine." "Are you? Really?" I looked at the scrapbook, then at my medical degrees, my new life, my freedom. "There's peace," I said. "Not joy, not forgiveness, but peace." "Is that enough?" Through my window, I watched London's lights flicker on against the darkness. Somewhere in Trauma Bay 3, a teenage girl was getting the help she needed, despite her parents' protests. Tomorrow, there would be others. "Yes," I said. "It's enough." I closed the scrapbook, but kept the childhood note. Pinned it to my board where I could see it during difficult cases. One day, I will not need their approval to breathe. That day had come. And with it came not happiness, not exactly, but something better. Something earned through every careful cut, every precise incision into the infected past. Something that felt like healing. My pager beeped. Another emergency calling. I grabbed my coat, leaving the ghosts of my family behind in that scrapbook. They had their consequences. I had my peace. And somewhere between the two lay the truth about family, about healing, about survival. Sometimes the deepest wounds heal the cleanest when you stop trying to stitch them to people who keep ripping out the sutures. I headed to the emergency room, ready for whatever came next. Not as anyone's daughter or sister, just as myself. Finally, completely uncompromisingly myself,